Nero Wolfe, and the tragedy at Hillford Academy. The third Wednesday in October brought one of those crystalline autumn mornings that make New York almost tolerable. I was at my desk in the office, catching up on correspondence, and trying to decide whether Lily Rowan's invitation to a gallery opening was worth enduring 3 hours of abstract expressionism, when the doorbell rang. It was 10:47 a.m., which meant Nero Wolfe was upstairs in the plant rooms with Theodore Horstman, conducting his morning communion with the 10,000 orchids that justify the 4 stories of brownstone at 900 and West 35th Street. Fritz Brenner was in the kitchen, preparing lunch. I was alone on the ground floor, which meant greeting visitors fell to me. Through the one-way glass panel beside the front door, I could see a woman on the stoop. She was perhaps 45, dressed in a tailored grey suit that whispered money rather than shouting it, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her face was pale, her hands clutched a leather handbag, and her posture suggested someone accustomed to authority but currently shaken from her foundations. Before I could reach the door, I heard the low rumble from the front room, Caesar's warning growl picked up immediately by Mars, and then the others. All 6 dogs had materialized from wherever they'd been lounging, now arrayed in the hallway between me and the door. Caesar, the massive black and tan Doberman who ran the pack, stood at the front with Mars flanking him. Behind them, Apollo's lean form was coiled and ready, while Minerva and Diana watched with calculating intelligence. Loyal, the brick-red pit bull with the notched ear and white chest blaze, sat slightly apart, his brass collar plate catching the light. "Easy," I told them. They knew my voice, but they also knew their job. I checked the glass again. The woman was alone, no suspicious bulges in her clothing, no one lurking behind the stoop's iron railings. I opened the door halfway, keeping my body in the gap. The bulletproof glass panels on either side and the reinforced steel core made the door virtually impenetrable, but old habits die hard. "Yes?" Her eyes widened at the sight of the dogs behind me. Caesar had moved forward, his massive head level with my hip, studying her with those dark, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I need to see Mr. Nero Wolfe." Her voice was cultured, controlled despite her obvious distress. "My name is Judith Pemberton. I'm headmistress at Hillford Academy. There's been a tragedy, and I was told Mr. Wolfe might help." "Mr. Wolfe doesn't see people without an appointment, and he's engaged until 11. Also, he doesn't work. I know about his hours." She managed to meet my eyes despite Caesar's scrutiny. "I wouldn't have come if this weren't desperate. A young man is dead, Mr. Goodwin. It was your name on the door, and I believe he was murdered. The police say accident. I say murder." That got my attention. Caesar's growl had subsided to a low rumble, which meant he'd decided she wasn't an immediate threat. The dogs had excellent judgment. "If you're sure it's murder, why not convince the police?" "Because the evidence is circumstantial. The victim was troubled, and Hillford Academy's Board of Trustees would rather sweep this under an expensive oriental rug than face scandal." Her hands tightened on her handbag. "I taught literature for 15 years before becoming headmistress, Mr. Goodwin. I know the difference between tragic accident and calculated murder. This was murder." I considered. Wolfe would be furious at the interruption, but something about her conviction interested me. Also, our bank balance could use the inflation that only a client brings. "Wait here." I closed the door and headed for the kitchen. Fritz was at the counter, preparing the morning's marketing list. I asked him to bring coffee to the office for our visitor, then climbed the stairs to the plant rooms. The warm, humid air hit me as I entered. Wolfe was in the cool room, standing before a bench of odontoglossums, Theodore at his side with a notebook. Both turned as I approached. "Archie." Wolfe's tone carried reproach. "I am not to be disturbed. A headmistress named Judith Pemberton is downstairs. She believes one of her students was murdered and wants to hire you. The police say accident. She says the board wants it buried. She looks respectable and desperate." "No. She's from Hillford Academy." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Hillford Academy was one of Manhattan's most prestigious private schools, the kind where senators' sons rubbed elbows with industrial heirs and foreign diplomats' children, money and influence concentrated like uranium. "Nevertheless, no, we have no current obligations, our bank balance is adequate, and I am not interested in academic politics or the fevered imaginings of educators who confuse melodrama with reality." "Should I tell her you're too busy smelling flowers to investigate a possible murder?" His eyes moved to me, a full eighth of an inch. Your sarcasm is noted and deplored. Tell her I am not available. I shrugged and headed back downstairs. Judith Pemberton was in the office, perched on the red leather chair, untouched coffee before her. Caesar had followed me down and now sat near the door, watching her. The other dogs had dispersed, but I knew they'd remain alert. Mr. Wolfe declines, I told her, settling behind my desk. He's not interested in academic matters, and he questions whether your tragedy is actually murder. Her jaw tightened. I see. Then I've wasted my morning. She stood, leaving the coffee untouched. Thank you for your time, Mr. Goodwin. Before you go, give me the basics. If you're right, you'll need to convince someone. Practice on me. She studied me for a moment, then sat back down. Caesar's ears pricked forward. His name was Roland Kimber, 17 years old, senior brilliant pianist. Scholarship student from Queens, not one of our wealthy legacy children. Last Friday evening, he was found dead in the music hall, fallen from the catwalk above the stage. 40-foot drop onto hardwood flooring. The police determined he'd been adjusting stage lights for Saturday's autumn concert. Lost his footing, fell. Accidental death. Case closed. What makes you think otherwise? 7 things, she counted on her fingers. First, Roland had severe acrophobia. I've known him for 4 years. He wouldn't go near heights. Second, he wasn't on the lighting crew. That was handled by Gregory Ashford, the music director's son. Third, Roland was left-handed, but was found with a wrench in his right hand. Fourth, there were fresh bruises on his shoulders consistent with being pushed or shoved. Fifth, someone altered the duty roster to make it appear Roland was assigned to lighting. Sixth, Roland had received threats over the past month. Nothing explicit, but hostile notes slipped into his music locker. Seventh, she paused, her face tightening. He was terrified of something. Came to my office 3 days before he died. Wanted to tell me something important, but lost his nerve. Said he'd come back when he had proof. He never got the chance. I'd been making notes. Proof of what? He wouldn't say. But Hillford isn't just a school, Mr. Goodwin. It's an ecosystem of privilege, ambition, and secrets. We have students whose fathers run corporations and whose mothers sit on museum boards. We have teachers who've published important work and faculty who couldn't get positions anywhere else. We have trustees who treat the school as their personal fiefdom and donors who expect influence for their generosity. Roland was a disruption. Talented, yes, but poor, outspoken, unimpressed by wealth. He saw things others wanted hidden. And the board wants this buried. The board wants no scandal. The autumn concert proceeds fund our scholarship program. Major donors attend. The spring gala brings in 6 figures annually. A murder investigation would be catastrophic for fundraising. Her voice hardened. So they've persuaded themselves it was an accident, made appropriate sympathetic noises, and moved on. But I can't. Roland deserved better. It was a good presentation. Convincing even. I glanced at Caesar, who'd settled onto the floor, his massive head resting on his paws. When the alpha dog relaxes, it means the visitors passed some invisible test. What's your connection to Roland beyond being headmistress? He was extraordinary. Real talent, Mr. Goodwin, the kind you see once in a decade. I wrote his recommendation for the Juilliard early admission program. He would have gotten in, become something remarkable. Now he's dead, and everyone pretends it's simply tragic bad luck. She opened her handbag and withdrew an envelope. I can pay your fee, whatever it is. I have personal funds. Mr. Wolfe's fee is $25,000 plus expenses for murder. Her face went white, but she didn't flinch. That's considerable. He's considerable, also unavailable. She stood again, this time with finality. Then I'll find someone else. Thank you for listening, Mr. Goodwin. I watched her leave, Caesar trailing her to the door. Through the one-way glass, I saw her descend the stoop, shoulders squared despite obvious disappointment. She turned south on 10th Avenue and disappeared. Caesar looked at me and yawned, displaying impressive dentistry, then padded back toward the front room. I sat at my desk, reading through my notes. The case had possibilities: academic intrigue, wealthy suspects, a vulnerable victim, a covered-up crime, the kind of thing Wolfe enjoyed dismantling once he got started. The problem was getting him started. At 11, the elevator descended, and Wolfe emerged, settling behind his desk like a continent, achieving equilibrium. Fritz appeared with beer, delivering a chilled bottle and glass on a tray. Wolfe poured carefully, watching the foam rise exactly to the proper level, then drank deeply. "Your headmistress has departed?" he asked. "She has, offered $25,000 for a murder investigation. You said no. I said you meant it. She left disappointed." "Good." Agreed. "Who needs $25,000 when we're flush with—" "Let me check. Approximately $8,000 in the operating account, minus monthly expenses of around $6,000. We have adequate reserves." "We have reserves you hate touching because you treat them like orchid bulbs, never to be disturbed except in catastrophic emergencies." He drank more beer, ignoring me. I opened the morning mail, sorting bills from correspondence. After 10 minutes, he spoke again. "Why does she believe it's murder?" I'd been waiting for that. Once Wolfe's curiosity engaged, resistance became performance. I gave him the 7 points Judith Pemberton had outlined, adding my own observations about her demeanor and conviction. When I finished, he was silent for 30 seconds, his lips pushing in and out, thinking mode. "The altered duty roster is suggestive," he finally said. "As is the victim's acrophobia, if genuine. The bruising could be from the fall itself. The threatening notes may be unrelated adolescent cruelty. The wrench in the wrong hand is interesting but not conclusive. Panic could cause someone to grasp with their non-dominant hand. So accident, not murder." I didn't say that. I said the evidence is ambiguous, which makes it precisely the sort of situation where police opt for the simpler explanation. If Miss Pemberton is correct and this was murder, the killer constructed clever misdirection. If she's incorrect, she's manufacturing conspiracy from tragedy. He drank more beer. "Either way, it's not my concern." "Right, because we're solvent, unoccupied, and you'd hate to exercise your brain on an actual challenge." His eyes slitted. "You're being provocative." "I'm being honest. A 17-year-old scholarship student might have been murdered. The institutional powers want it erased, and you're choosing to remain a quarter-ton shut-in who grows flowers and eats squab. If I accept this case, you'll be required to spend considerable time at Hillford Academy, interviewing adolescents and academic bureaucrats. You detest such assignments." "True, but I detest watching you vegetate more." He glowered at me, then reached for the button that summoned Fritz. When Fritz appeared, Wolfe said, "Tell Saul Panzer I may require his services. Also, contact Miss Judith Pemberton. Archie will provide the details, and inform her I will see her at 6 o'clock this evening. Tell her to bring documentation regarding the deceased, the duty roster, and any threatening communications he received." "Yes, sir." Fritz departed. Wolfe turned to me. "Satisfied?" "Ecstatic." "What changed your mind?" "You did. Your instincts regarding prospective clients are reliable. If you think Miss Pemberton merits attention, investigation is warranted." He paused. "Also, the case presents interesting questions. Adolescent social dynamics in elite environments, the institutional suppression of uncomfortable truths, the mechanics of staged accidents, all intellectually stimulating. And the 25,000? Merely adequate compensation for disrupting my schedule." I grinned and reached for the phone to start tracking down Judith Pemberton's contact information. Caesar wandered in and settled near Wolfe's desk, having apparently decided the day's excitement was over. Mars and Apollo appeared briefly in the doorway, surveyed the scene and disappeared again. The game was afoot, as somebody famous once said, and at Hillford Academy someone had gotten away with murder. Not for long. Judith Pemberton returned at 6 o'clock precisely, carrying a leather portfolio that looked expensive and well used. I met her at the door, Caesar and Mars again providing their customary reception committee, and escorted her to the office. This time she took the red leather chair without hesitation, and Caesar settled nearby with what looked almost like approval. Wolfe entered at 2 minutes past 6, fresh from his afternoon session in the plant rooms, and settled behind his desk. Fritz brought beer. Wolfe poured, drank, and regarded our client with the expression of a botanist, examining an interesting but potentially troublesome specimen. "Miss Pemberton, you've brought documentation?" "I have." She opened the portfolio and removed several folders. Roland Kimber's academic file, the stage crew duty roster, both the original and the altered version, photographs of the music hall where he died, the medical examiner's report, and copies of 3 threatening notes found in his locker after his death. After? His roommate, Peter Howell, Found them when collecting Roland's belongings. He brought them to me. The police declined to view them as relevant. I'll examine everything shortly. First, provide comprehensive background on Hillford Academy, your role there, and Roland Kimber's position within the school's social structure. Judith Pemberton composed herself, hands folded on her lap. Hillford Academy was founded in 1887 by Josiah Hillford, a textile magnate who believed America's elite needed rigorous classical education. We're located on Riverside Drive, a 4-story limestone building overlooking the Hudson. 200 students, grades 9 through 12, boarding and day students. Annual tuition is $3,000, prohibitive for most families. I did the math. 200 students at $3,000 each was $600,000 in tuition alone. Add endowment income and donor contributions, and Hillford Academy commanded resources that could buy considerable influence. We offer approximately 20 full scholarships annually, she continued, selected through rigorous examination. Roland Kimber won his scholarship 4 years ago, testing in the 99th percentile across all subjects. He was remarkable, not just intelligent, but creatively gifted. His piano playing was extraordinary. Tell me about the school's power structure. Wolfe said. Who controls Hillford? Officially, the Board of Trustees, 15 members, mostly alumni and major donors. They hire and fire the headmaster or headmistress, approve budgets, and set institutional direction. The current board chairman is Bernard Cathcart, class of 1919, retired investment banker. He's meaning he treats Hillford as his personal kingdom. He was instrumental in appointing me 4 years ago, and he's been instrumental in constraining my authority ever since. Her voice held carefully controlled bitterness. Bernard believes headmasters should be administrative functionaries, not educational leaders. He micromanages curriculum, vetoes faculty appointments, and intervenes in disciplinary matters. The board defers to him absolutely. Does he have financial interest in avoiding scandal? He has reputational interest. Bernard's grandson, Harrison Cathcart, is a junior at Hillford. Harrison is troubled, mediocre student, disciplinary problems, sense of entitlement. Bernard has intervened repeatedly to prevent his expulsion. A murder investigation would expose Harrison's behavior to scrutiny, something Bernard would find intolerable. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted. You believe Harrison Cathcart is involved in Roland's death? I believe Harrison hated Roland. Roland was everything Harrison isn't: talented, self-made, respected. Harrison comes from money. Roland came from nothing. In Harrison's world, that should have meant Roland was beneath notice. But Roland didn't play that game. He refused to be invisible. Elaborate. She hesitated, choosing words carefully. There's a social hierarchy at Hillford, Mr. Wolfe. Legacy students, children of alumni, occupy the top tier. They have wealth, connections, institutional protection. Scholarship students occupy the bottom. They're tolerated, sometimes praised as examples of meritocracy, but never truly accepted. Roland violated those boundaries. He dated Constance Merrill, daughter of Hillford trustee Walter Merrill. He criticized the school's curriculum in the student newspaper. He filed a formal complaint when Gregory Ashford, son of music director Raymond Ashford, received preferential treatment in orchestra placement despite inferior talent. Roland made himself a target. And Harrison Cathcart specifically. Harrison and Roland had a physical altercation 3 weeks before Roland died. Harrison made remarks about Roland's mother. She works as a seamstress in Queens, and Roland punched him. Harrison required medical attention. I suspended Roland for 3 days, Harrison for 1 day. Bernard was furious at the disparity and demanded I expel Roland. I refused. Bernard threatened my job. The board supported him. I was overruled, but negotiated a compromise. Both students would face equal punishment if further incidents occurred. Wolfe drank beer, his expression thoughtful. Did further incidents occur? Not overtly, but the threatening notes began appearing in Roland's locker immediately after his return. Nothing explicitly violent, but hostile. You don't belong here. Know your place. That sort of thing. Roland showed me 2 before his death. He was rattled but tried to hide it. Was Harrison's handwriting on the notes? No. They were block printed, untraceable. Convenient. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, your notebook. I'd been making notes throughout, but now I read them back to confirm accuracy. When I finished, Wolfe gestured toward the portfolio. Show me the documentation. Start with the duty roster. Judith Pemberton removed 2 sheets and brought them to Wolfe's desk. I moved to look over his shoulder. The first sheet was the original roster, typed on what looked like a school letterhead. Under Lighting Crew Autumn Concert were listed 3 names: Gregory Ashford, Captain; Timothy Morse; Angela Fletcher. The second sheet was identical, except for one addition. Roland Kimber's name had been inserted in handwriting between Angela Fletcher and the bottom of the list. Who maintains these rosters? Wolfe asked. Raymond Ashford, the music director. He handles all concert logistics. These rosters are posted in the music hall 1 week before performances. Where was the original roster kept? In Raymond's office, filed with other concert materials. Who has access to that office? Raymond, his assistant Margaret Wu, the custodial staff, and anyone who might enter during business hours when the door is unlocked. Wolfe studied both sheets. The handwriting appears hurried, but not disguised. Someone attempting to make an addition look official, but unwilling to invest time in careful forgery. The ink is different. The original is typed with consistent darkness. The addition uses ballpoint pen in blue rather than black. Sloppy. The police noted that, Judith said. They concluded Roland added his own name, wanting to help with lighting but lacking official assignment. When he fell, they interpreted it as unauthorized access, resulting in tragedy. Absurd, Wolfe said flatly. If Roland wanted to join the lighting crew, he would have asked Raymond Ashford for official placement. Adding his own name to a roster achieves nothing. It grants no authority, no permission, no legitimacy. It merely makes him appear to be where he had no business being, which is precisely what a killer would want after pushing him from a catwalk. That's exactly what I argued, Judith said. The police were unpersuaded. Wolfe set the rosters aside and picked up the medical examiner's report. He read in silence for 2 minutes, then handed it to me. I scanned quickly. Roland Kimber, male, 17 years old, found dead at approximately 8:15 p.m. on Friday, October 14th. Cause of death, massive trauma from 40-foot fall, including skull fracture, spinal damage, and internal injuries. Time of death estimated between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Notable findings: bruising on shoulders and upper arms consistent with either fall trauma or physical struggle. Toxicology, negative. Conclusion, accidental death. The bruising is ambiguous, Wolfe said when I'd finished, but combined with acrophobia, the wrong hand wrench, and the forged roster, it suggests premeditation. Someone planned this carefully. Who found the body? I asked Judith. Timothy Morse, one of the actual lighting crew members. He arrived at 8:15 for final checks before Saturday's concert and found Roland on the stage floor. He immediately called campus security, who called police. By the time I arrived, the medical examiner had pronounced death and removed the body. Where was everyone else that evening? Friday evening is relatively quiet at Hillford. No mandatory activities. Many day students go home for the weekend. Boarding students have free time. Library, dormitories, recreation areas. Faculty were either in their campus apartments or off grounds. Who was the last person to see Roland alive? His roommate, Peter Howell. Peter left their room at 7 p.m. to study at the library. Roland was practicing piano in their room. They have an upright piano for his use. Peter returned at 9:30 and learned Roland was dead. Wolfe gestured toward the remaining folders. Show me the threatening notes and Roland's academic file. Judith handed over the notes first. 3 pieces of notebook paper, torn from a standard spiral-bound pad, with block-printed messages in blue ballpoint pen. You don't belong here. Know your place.
Go back where you came from.
Simple, hostile, unsigned. The handwriting was deliberately crude. All capital letters, no distinctive characteristics, generic hostility. Untraceable, I observed. Could be anyone. Indeed, Wolfe said. Though the sentiment is revealing, these aren't threats of violence but assertions of social exclusion. The author wants Roland to feel inferior and unwelcome. That suggests someone invested in Hillford's hierarchy, someone who resents his presence rather than fearing him specifically. Harrison Cathcart, Judith said. Possibly. But also Gregory Ashford, whose orchestra position was threatened, or any legacy student who viewed Roland as disruptive, or even faculty members who disliked his outspokenness. Wolfe set the notes aside. Show me the academic file. Roland Kimber's file was impressive. Straight A's across 4 years, advanced placement courses, test scores in the 99th percentile, teacher comments universally praising his intelligence and creativity. A few noted he could be challenging and opinionated, but none suggested serious behavioral problems beyond the Harrison Cathcart altercation. Attached to the file was Roland's Juilliard application essay. I read over Wolfe's shoulder. Music saved my life. I grew up in Astoria, Queens, where my mother worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and housed. We had nothing, no car, no savings, no safety net. What we had was a battered upright piano my mother bought at a yard sale when I was 7. She couldn't afford lessons, but I taught myself, playing everything from Bach to Gershwin by ear. Music was freedom from poverty, transcendence from limitation. When I won the Hillford scholarship, I thought I'd entered paradise. I was wrong. Hillford gave me education, but demanded submission. It offered opportunity but required silence. I learned that talent matters less than pedigree, that intelligence means nothing without wealth. I also learned to fight. My mother taught me that dignity isn't negotiable, and that bowing to injustice betrays everything music represents. At Juilliard, I'll find community among artists who value creation over credentials. I'll become the musician my mother's sacrifices deserve. I'll prove that excellence transcends economics, and that the poor kid from Queens can stand beside the privileged and say, without apology, I belong here. Wolfe finished reading and sat back, his eyes half closed. Remarkable, eloquent, defiant, and unfortunately prophetic. This young man made enemies. Powerful enemies, Judith agreed. Bernard Cathcart read that essay. He called it subversive and inappropriate. He wanted Roland to revise it before submission. Roland refused. Bernard wanted him expelled. I fought it. Roland submitted the essay unchanged. When was he notified about Juilliard's decision? He wasn't. The notification comes in December. He would have been accepted. Everyone knew it. Wolfe opened his eyes fully. Did anyone stand to benefit from preventing his acceptance? Judith hesitated. Gregory Ashford applied to Juilliard's composition program. Raymond Ashford believed Gregory would be admitted but worried that having 2 Hillford students at Juilliard simultaneously, 1 scholarship, 1 legacy, would create unfavorable comparisons. Gregory is talented, but not extraordinary. Roland was extraordinary. Did Gregory know about Roland's application? Everyone knew. Roland made no secret of it. Wolfe drank the last of his beer and set the glass down with finality. Miss Pemberton, I'll require access to Hillford Academy. Specifically, I need Archie to interview faculty, students and staff, without institutional obstruction. Can you arrange that? I can authorize visitor access, but Bernard Cathcart will resist. He's already indicated I should stop agitating about Roland's death. Then don't inform him. Introduce Archie as a prospective donor, evaluating Hillford's scholarship program, someone considering a substantial gift. That should grant him considerable freedom. Her face brightened. That's clever. Elementary misdirection. Archie will begin tomorrow morning. I'll want detailed physical layout of the music hall, schedules for all faculty and students present the evening. Roland died, and copies of any disciplinary records for Harrison Cathcart and Gregory Ashford. I'll have everything ready. One final question. Do you believe Roland was killed because of something he knew, or because of something he was? Judith Pemberton considered carefully. Both, I think. He was killed because he refused to accept his assigned place in Hillford's hierarchy, but also because he discovered something that threatened someone powerful enough to kill rather than be exposed. And you have no idea what he discovered? None. But it terrified him, Mr. Wolfe. When he came to my office 3 days before he died, he was frightened in a way I'd never seen. Not angry, not defiant. Frightened. He'd learned something that endangered him, and he knew it. Wolfe nodded slowly. Then we must discover what he knew and who killed him for it. Return tomorrow morning at 9 with the materials I've requested. Archie will begin his investigation immediately afterward. She stood, relieved and grateful. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe. Roland deserves justice. Roland deserves to be alive. Since he isn't, he deserves the truth. I'll provide it. I escorted her to the door. Caesar followed, watching her depart with his usual intensity. When she'd gone, I returned to the office to find Wolfe sitting motionless, his fingers laced across his middle seventh, lips pushing in and out. So, I said, murder? Almost certainly. The question is not whether Roland was killed, but who benefited sufficiently to risk it. In an elite institution like Hillford, reputation is currency, advancement is warfare, and a talented outsider represents disruption. Roland was killed to preserve someone's position, or to protect someone's secret. We must determine which. And if Bernard Cathcart interferes, then we learn something useful about who's protecting the killer. He opened his eyes. Make arrangements with Saul for periodic surveillance. Have Fred Durkin on standby for additional legwork, and alert Ori Cather that I may need someone to shadow Harrison Cathcart. You think it's Harrison? I think young Mr. Cathcart has motive, temperament, and institutional protection. That makes him dangerous regardless of guilt. We'll discover the truth, but we'll proceed carefully. Wealthy adolescents with powerful grandparents have destroyed better men than us. I nodded and reached for the phone. It was going to be an interesting case. Money, privilege, murder, and academic politics. All the ingredients Wolfe loved to demolish with relentless logic and theatrical confrontation. Tomorrow, I'd enter Hillford Academy as a prospective donor, and somewhere in that limestone fortress overlooking the Hudson, a killer was waiting. Thursday morning arrived with rain. Cold, steady, miserable October rain that turned Manhattan grey and made even the brownstone's bulletproof windows look depressing. I was at breakfast with Wolfe grapefruit, sausages and blueberry muffins for him, scrambled eggs and bacon for me, when Judith Pemberton arrived at 8:50 a.m. Fritz brought her to the dining room, unusual but acceptable given the weather. She carried a larger portfolio this time, looking like she'd been awake all night. Caesar and Mars had greeted her at the door with considerably less suspicion than before. They were learning she wasn't a threat, and now Loyal, the pit bull, padded in to inspect her with those intelligent eyes. Miss Pemberton, Wolfe said, not rising. Coffee, please. Fritz poured. She accepted gratefully and took the chair Wolfe indicated. Loyal settled near her feet, which I took as a good sign. The dog's judgment had been proven accurate before. I have everything you requested, she said, opening the portfolio. Floor plans of the music hall, personnel schedules for last Friday evening, and the disciplinary files. She paused. Also something new. This morning I received an anonymous note, slipped under my office door. She handed Wolfe a single sheet of paper. He read it, then passed it to me. Stop investigating or you'll regret it. Same block printing, same blue ballpoint pen, same generic hostility as the notes Roland had received. Someone's nervous, I observed. Someone's foolish, Wolfe corrected. Threatening a headmistress with vague consequences merely confirms our suspicions. However, it also indicates the killer is watching and aware of your visit here yesterday evening. Miss Pemberton, did anyone see you enter or leave this brownstone? I don't know. I was focused on getting here and didn't notice anyone on the street. Then we must assume you were observed. This complicates matters but also accelerates them. Archie, you'll visit Hillford immediately. The sooner we establish you as a prospective donor, the less suspicious your presence becomes. He turned back to Judith. Have you informed anyone at Hillford about hiring me? No one. I've been very careful. Good. Maintain that discretion. When Archie arrives, treat him as you would any wealthy visitor. Cordial, professional, unremarkable. Can you arrange for him to tour the music hall first? I need his observations of the physical space where Roland died. Easily. I'll say you specifically want to understand how scholarship funds support the arts program. Excellent. Who will escort him? I'll assign Margaret Wu, the music director's assistant. She knows the music hall intimately and is she trustworthy? Judith hesitated. She's competent and professional. Whether she's trustworthy depends on what you mean. Margaret's loyal to Hillford, which sometimes conflicts with being loyal to truth. A common problem in institutions. Wolfe drained his coffee cup. Archie, take the floor plans and study them before departing. Look specifically for how someone might access the catwalk unobserved, where the killer could have waited, and how they ensured Roland would be alone. Miss Pemberton, what time does Hillford's school day begin? 9 o'clock. Classes run until 3, with breaks for lunch and activities. And the music hall, when is it available? It's used throughout the day for classes, rehearsals, and private practice. Evening access requires authorization. Raymond Ashford has keys. as do I and the custodial staff. Who authorized access last Friday evening? Raymond claims he authorized only the lighting crew, Gregory, Timothy, and Angela. He insists he never approved Roland's presence. Could Roland have obtained a key? Possibly. Keys are kept in the administrative office. Security is imperfect. Wolfe grunted. One more question. You said Roland came to your office 3 days before he died, frightened and wanting to discuss something important. Did he give any indication of where he'd been, or what he'd been doing before that visit? Judith frowned, thinking. He mentioned he'd been in the library archives, researching something for a history paper. He seemed distracted, kept glancing at the door, like he expected someone to interrupt. When I asked what was wrong, he said he needed to verify something first. Then he left. The library archives, Wolfe repeated. What materials are housed there? Old records, yearbooks, photographs, institutional documents, Hillford's history, going back to 8. Students rarely use them, except for specific research assignments. Which history paper was Roland working on? I don't know. He didn't say. Wolfe was silent for 10 seconds, lips moving. Find out. Determine his history teacher, the assignment topic, and whether other students were also researching in the archives. If Roland discovered something there that frightened him, we need to know what it was. Judith nodded, making notes. I'll have that information by this afternoon. Good. Archie, go to Hillford, examine the music hall, interview Margaret Wu, and observe the institution's dynamics. I want detailed reports on faculty interactions, student behavior, and the general atmosphere. Pay particular attention to Harrison Cathcart and Gregory Ashford. See them in their natural habitat. Also determine who had opportunity to access the music hall Friday evening and who benefits from Roland's death beyond simple revenge. Am I looking for anything specific? The anomaly. In every environment there are patterns, and in every crime there are disruptions to those patterns. Find what doesn't fit, and we'll find the killer. I finished breakfast, collected the floor plans and files from Judith, and headed upstairs to change into my prospective donor costume, conservative suit, expensive tie, the kind of presentation that suggests money and potential generosity. When I came back down, Wolfe was in the office with Judith, discussing logistics. Archie will maintain his cover. As Mr. Goodwin, prospective donor, Wolfe was saying, under no circumstances should anyone learn he's my employee. If his identity is compromised, the investigation becomes vastly more difficult. I understand. Also be vigilant. The note you received this morning indicates the killer is watching. If you notice anything unusual, someone following you, unexpected questions about Roland's death, sudden interest in your activities, inform me immediately. She looked worried but determined. I will. I collected my coat and hat. Caesar and Mars escorted me to the door. They always did when I was leaving on business, and I gave them both quick scratches behind the ears before heading out into the rain. The taxi ride to Riverside Drive took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Hillford Academy appeared as we turned off the main avenue, a massive limestone building that looked more like a fortress than a school. 4 stories, Gothic Revival architecture, tall windows with stone tracery, and a slate roof with decorative pinnacles. Very impressive, very expensive, very intimidating. I paid the driver and approached the main entrance. Double oak doors, brass fixtures, and a bronze plaque reading Hillford Academy, founded 1887, excellence through discipline. I pushed through into a marble-floored entrance hall with portraits of stern-looking men in academic robes lining the walls, presumably past headmasters and important donors. A reception desk stood to one side, manned by a middle-aged woman with steel-grey hair and a no-nonsense expression. May I help you? Archie Goodwin, to see Headmistress Pemberton. I'm expected. She consulted an appointment book, nodded, and picked up a telephone. 2 minutes later, Judith appeared from a side corridor, wearing her professional headmistress face. Mr. Goodwin, welcome to Hillford Academy. I'm so pleased you're considering supporting our scholarship program. We shook hands formally. She'd transformed completely, warm but businesslike, enthusiastic but not desperate, good acting. I'm impressed by what I've learned about Hillford, I said, matching her tone. I'd love to see where scholarship students benefit most from donor support. Of course, I've asked Margaret Wu, our music director's assistant, to give you a comprehensive tour of our arts facilities. The music hall is particularly worth seeing. Many scholarship students excel in musical performance. On cue, a woman appeared from the same corridor Judith had used. Margaret Wu was perhaps 30, small and precise, with dark hair cut in a neat bob and intelligent eyes that assessed me instantly. She wore a simple black dress, with a strand of pearls, understated elegance. "Mr. Goodwin, I'm Margaret Wu. Welcome to Hillford." Her handshake was firm, her smile professional. I liked her immediately, though I noted the reservation in her eyes. She was suspicious, which meant she was smart. "Miss Wu, Mrs. Pemberton tells me you're an expert on Hillford's arts program." "I wouldn't say expert, but I've worked here for 6 years. I know our facilities well." She glanced at Judith. "Shall I start with the music hall?" "Perfect. Mr. Goodwin specifically wants to understand how scholarship funds support musical education." We said goodbye to Judith and headed deeper into the building. Margaret led me through corridors lined with classroom doors, trophy cases displaying academic and athletic achievements, and bulletin boards covered with notices about upcoming events. Students passed us occasionally, well-dressed, confident, carrying books and looking busy. Several glanced at me curiously, but no one spoke. "Hillford has about 200 students?" I asked. "Yes, about evenly split between boarding and day students. Most come from New York, but we have students from across the country and several international students." She paused. "We're quite selective, less than 10% acceptance rate." Impressive. "And the scholarship program?" 20 full scholarships annually, covering tuition, room, board and fees. "It's competitive. Hundreds of applicants for those spots. The students who win them are exceptional." "Like Roland Kimber?" She stopped walking, turned to face me. "You know about Roland?" "Mrs. Pemberton mentioned him, said he was remarkably talented." "He was." Her voice was careful. "His death was a terrible loss for Hillford. I heard it was an accident. Fell from some kind of catwalk?" "Yes. Last Friday. He was adjusting lighting for our autumn concert." She resumed walking. "It's been difficult for everyone, students, faculty, staff." We reached a set of double doors with brass handles. Margaret opened them, and we entered the music hall. It was magnificent. The space was essentially a small theater, sloped floor with rows of seats facing a raised stage, ornate plasterwork on the ceiling, excellent acoustics evident even in the empty quiet. I estimated seating for about 300. The stage had heavy velvet curtains, professional lighting equipment overhead, and wings on either side for entrances and exits. And 40 feet above the stage floor, the catwalk where Roland Kimber had died. "This is extraordinary," I said, meaning it, better than many professional theaters. Hillford takes art seriously. Major donors expect high-quality facilities, and the autumn concert is our biggest fundraising event. This hall cost over $400,000 to renovate in 9. I studied the space, making mental notes. The catwalk was a narrow metal platform running along both sides of the stage and across the back, accessible via a ladder built into the left wing. Lighting fixtures hung from the catwalk, all angles downward toward the stage. Safety railing ran along the outer edge, about 3 feet high, sturdy metal construction, not something you'd fall over accidentally. "How do technicians access the catwalk?" I asked. "Ladder in the stage left wing. It's marked authorized personnel only, but students on the lighting crew use it regularly for adjusting lights and making repairs." "Is it safe?" She hesitated. "Usually, yes. But accidents can happen, especially if someone's careless or unfamiliar with heights." Was Roland familiar with heights? I don't know. Her tone suggested she knew more than she was saying. "Mr. Goodwin, may I ask why you're interested in Roland's death?" "You're here to evaluate the scholarship program, not investigate accidents." Time to decide how much truth to share. I studied her face, smart, cautious, possibly sympathetic. A risk, but potentially worth it. Because Mrs. Pemberton believes it wasn't an accident, and because I'm not actually a prospective donor. Her eyes widened. "What?" "I'm Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe, the private detective. Mrs. Pemberton hired him to investigate Roland's death. She believes he was murdered." Margaret Wu went pale. Are you serious?" "Completely. Mrs. Pemberton thinks someone pushed Roland from that catwalk and staged it to look like an accident. She asked us to find the truth. And you're here to what?" interrogate people, to observe, interview, and gather information. I'm not a cop, Miss Wu. I'm a private investigator trying to determine whether a 17-year-old scholarship student was murdered. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. But if you want justice for Roland, I could use your help." She stared at me for 30 seconds, internal struggle visible on her face. Finally she spoke. "I'll help. Because Judith is right. It wasn't an accident. Roland was terrified of heights. He'd never go on that catwalk voluntarily. And the story about him adding his own name to the duty roster is absurd. Roland wasn't stupid or suicidal. Someone killed him." "Who?" "I don't know, but I have suspicions." She glanced around the empty hall, then lowered her voice. "Come with me. I'll show you something." She led me onto the stage and to the ladder. We climbed carefully. The metal rungs were solid but narrow, and emerged onto the catwalk. From up here, the stage floor looked terrifyingly far below. I'm not acrophobic, but even I felt the height. "Roland would never come up here," Margaret said. "I've seen him refuse to climb ladders to retrieve music folders from high shelves. There's no way he voluntarily ascended this catwalk." "Could someone have forced him?" "Maybe, but why would he comply? He could have screamed, fought, refused. The music hall isn't soundproof, someone would have heard. Unless he was unconscious when he was brought up." She considered. Possible. He was small, maybe 140 pounds. A strong adult could carry him up the ladder, but that seems risky. What if someone saw? "What time do you think he died?" The medical examiner said between 7:30 and 8 p.m. At that time on a Friday evening, the building's pretty empty. Day students are gone, boarding students are in dormitories or the library. Faculty are either off campus or in their apartments. The music hall would be deserted, except for lighting crew. Who was supposed to be on lighting crew? Gregory Ashford, Timothy Morse, and Angela Fletcher. Gregory's the captain, his father's the music director, so Gregory gets preferential treatment. Timothy and Angela are both seniors, competent, but not particularly interested in theatre tech. They do it for extracurricular credit. Were they here that night? Timothy found Roland's body at 8:15. Angela had permission to skip her grandmother's birthday. Gregory claims he left at 7, finished with his work, which means Roland died when only Timothy was supposed to be here, and Timothy didn't arrive until after the murder. Exactly. The killer chose their timing perfectly, a window when the music hall should be empty. I walked along the catwalk, examining the railing and lighting fixtures. Everything seemed sturdy and well maintained. No obvious hazards that would explain an accidental fall. "Show me where Roland was found." We descended the ladder and crossed to the center of the stage. Margaret pointed to a spot about 15 feet from the front edge. "Right here," Timothy said. He found Roland face down, blood pooling around his head. The wrench was next to him. The police said Roland had been holding it when he fell. Right hand or left hand? Right, according to the police report. Why? Roland was left-handed. If he'd been working with a wrench, he'd hold it in his dominant hand. The fact that it was in his right hand suggests someone placed it there after he died. Margaret's face tightened. "I didn't know that, but it makes sense. Roland always wrote left-handed, played piano left-hand dominant, everything. He'd never work with tools right-handed, unless someone forced it." I knelt, examining the stage floor. Any bloodstains had been cleaned thoroughly. The wood was polished and spotless. No evidence remained of what had happened here. "What about security cameras?" I asked. "None in the music hall. Hillford security is minimal. Locked exterior doors after hours, campus security patrol, but no surveillance system. The board says it's too invasive and undermines the trust-based environment. Convenient for murderers." "Very." I stood, brushing off my knees. "Tell me about Gregory Ashford." "Gregory," she sighed. "Gregory's complicated. He's talented, not as talented as Roland, but competent. He plays cello, composes occasionally, wants to attend Juilliard. His father Raymond is the music director and has been at Hillford for 20 years. Raymond's excellent but overbearing. He pushes Gregory constantly, expects greatness, and doesn't handle disappointment well." Did Gregory resent Roland? Everyone resented Roland to some degree. He was brilliant, poor, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge authority. That combination makes enemies in places like Hillford. But Gregory specifically? Yes. Roland criticized Gregory's conducting in the student newspaper, called him technically proficient but emotionally hollow. That kind of public humiliation doesn't get forgiven. Would Gregory kill over it? She hesitated. I don't know. Gregory's always been entitled. His father gives him advantages other students don't get. But murder? That seems extreme even for Gregory. What about Harrison Cathcart? Her expression darkened. Harrison's dangerous. Not because he's smart, he's not, but because he's cruel and protected. His grandfather, Bernard Cathcart, runs Hillford's board. Harrison knows he's untouchable, and he acts accordingly. Bullies scholarship students, cheats on exams, vandalizes property. Nothing sticks because Bernard intervenes. Did Harrison have specific issues with Roland? They hated each other. Harrison represents everything Roland despised. Wealth without merit, privilege without responsibility, and Roland dated Constance Merrill, which drove Harrison insane. Harrison wanted Constance, but she chose Roland instead. For someone like Harrison, that's unforgivable. Is Constance still at Hillford? Yes. Junior year. She's been devastated since Roland died. Won't talk to anyone, barely attending classes. I feel terrible for her. I made mental notes. Gregory Ashford, Harrison Cathcart, and Constance Merrill, 3 key players in Roland's life, all with potential motives or information. Anyone else I should know about? Margaret thought for a moment. Raymond Ashford, Gregory's father. He runs the music program with an iron fist. Roland challenged his authority multiple times, questioned his teaching methods, and filed that formal complaint. Raymond was furious, threatened to have Roland removed from orchestra. Judith overruled him, which made Raymond even angrier. Could Raymond have killed Roland? I've worked for Raymond for 6 years. He's arrogant, demanding, and vindictive. But murder? She shook her head. I can't see it. Raymond cares about his reputation too much. Murder's too messy, too risky. Unless Roland discovered something that threatened Raymond's reputation worse than murder. She went still. What do you mean? Mrs. Pemberton said. Roland visited her 3 days before he died, frightened and wanting to discuss something he'd discovered in the library archives. He said he needed proof before coming forward. Then he died. If Roland found evidence of something illegal or unethical, embezzlement, fraud, abuse, and the person responsible learned about it, murder becomes less risky than exposure. Margaret's face showed understanding and fear. You think Roland was killed to silence him? I think it's possible, which means we need to figure out what he discovered in those archives. She nodded slowly. I'll help however I can. Roland was a good kid who deserved better than this. Thank you. Now can you get me access to students and faculty? I need to interview Harrison, Gregory, Constance, Raymond Ashford, and anyone else connected to Roland. I can arrange meetings under the pretense of you evaluating the scholarship program. But be careful, Bernard Cathcart has spies everywhere. If he learns you're investigating, he'll shut you down instantly. Let him try. We left the music hall and returned to the administrative corridor. Margaret said she'd set up interviews for the afternoon and escorted me to a small conference room where I could wait. Before she left, she paused. Mr. Goodwin, thank you for doing this. Roland mattered. He deserves justice. He'll get it, I promise. She nodded and departed. I settled in to wait, reviewing my notes and planning questions. Somewhere in Hillford Academy, a killer was going about their day, confident they'd gotten away with murder. Not for long. Margaret Wu returned at 1:30 p.m. with a tray containing sandwiches, coffee, and a handwritten schedule. I've arranged interviews, she said, setting everything on the conference table. Gregory Ashford at 2 and Harrison Cathcart at 3. Constance Merrill at 4. Raymond Ashford refused to meet with you, said he's too busy preparing for Saturday's concert. Judith is working on changing his mind. What about Timothy Morse and Angela Fletcher, the other 2 lighting crew members? Timothy's in class until 3:30, but I can get him after. Angela's off campus today, doctor's appointment. Fine, let's start with Gregory. The sandwiches were excellent, roast beef on fresh bread, clearly from Hillford's well-funded kitchen. I ate while reviewing my notes and preparing questions. At exactly 2 and Margaret returned with a young man who looked like he'd stepped out of a college admissions brochure. Gregory Ashford was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with light brown hair carefully combed, a lantern jaw, and the kind of bland handsomeness that comes from good genetics and better nutrition. He wore a burgundy Hillford sweater over a white shirt, grey slacks, and polished shoes. Everything about him screamed privilege, from his confident posture to the expensive watch on his wrist. Mr. Goodwin. His handshake was firm but performed, like he'd been taught the correct pressure and duration. I'm Gregory Ashford. Miss Wu said you wanted to discuss Hillford's music program. That's right. I'm considering a substantial donation to the scholarship fund and want to understand how those scholarships impact students. Please sit. He took the chair across from me, perfectly comfortable. Margaret lingered near the door. Should I stay? She asked. That won't be necessary. I said, this is informal conversation, not official business. She nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Gregory watched her go, then turned back to me with a practiced smile. The scholarship program is excellent, he began. It brings diverse talent to Hillford and enriches our academic environment. Many of our most successful graduates were scholarship recipients. Like Roland Kimber? The smile didn't falter, but something shifted in his eyes. Yes, Roland was extremely talented. His death was tragic. I understand you found him. No, that was Timothy Morse. I'd left the music hall before the accident. But you were there earlier that evening, working on lighting for Saturday's concert? Yes, I'm captain of the lighting crew. We had final adjustments to make, angles, intensities, color filters. I worked from about 6 to 7, then left. Was anyone else there? Not that I saw. Timothy and Angela were scheduled for later. The hall was empty when I left. And Roland? Was he on your crew? Gregory's jaw tightened slightly. No. Roland wasn't assigned to lighting. He was a pianist, not a technician. Then why was his name added to the duty roster? I have no idea. The police think he added it himself. Maybe wanted to help out. Maybe just curious about stage lighting. Roland was impulsive sometimes. Was he? I've heard he was quite careful and methodical. With music, yes. With other things. Gregory shrugged. Look, Mr. Goodwin, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Roland could be difficult. He questioned authority, criticized people publicly, made enemies. Not everyone at Hillford appreciated his attitude. Did you appreciate it? His smile returned, colder now. I respected his talent, but no, I didn't appreciate being called emotionally hollow in the student newspaper. That was unprofessional and cruel. So you held a grudge? I held an opinion. There's a difference. Where did you go after leaving the music hall at 7? My room. I live on campus, faculty housing, since my father's the music director. I had dinner with my parents, then studied until about 10. My father can confirm that. Convenient. His expression hardened. Are you suggesting something, Mr. Goodwin? I'm asking questions. You're answering them. That's how conversation works. This doesn't feel like a conversation about scholarship donations. This feels like an interrogation. Maybe because you're acting like someone with something to hide. He stood abruptly. I don't have to tolerate this. If you're not actually a donor, I'm leaving. Sit down, Gregory. Excuse me? Sit down. We're not finished. He hesitated, clearly torn between indignation and curiosity. Curiosity won. He sat back down, arms crossed defensively. What do you want? The truth. Roland Kimber didn't climb that catwalk voluntarily. He was terrified of heights, left-handed, but found with a wrench in his right hand, and supposedly added his own name to a duty roster, in handwriting that doesn't match his. Someone killed him, and staged it as an accident. I want to know if that someone was you. Gregory went pale. That's insane. I didn't kill Roland, I didn't like him, but murder. You can't be serious. Why not? He criticized you publicly, threatened your orchestra position, applied to the same school where you'd applied. He was better than you, and everyone knew it. That's motive. It's not enough motive to kill someone. His voice rose, then he forced himself calm. Look, yes, Roland and I had conflicts. Yes, he was talented, maybe more talented than me, but I didn't kill him. I was with my parents all evening, and even if I wasn't, I'm not a murderer. Then who is? I don't know. But if you're looking for people who hated Roland, start with Harrison Cathcart. Harrison threatened Roland multiple times, got into a fistfight with him, and has a history of violence. Or talk to Raymond, my father. Roland filed a complaint against him, questioned his teaching methods, made him look bad in front of the board. My father's career is everything to him. If Roland threatened that, he trailed off. Are you saying your father killed Roland? I'm saying if you're investigating murder, investigate everyone with motive. Don't just focus on the convenient suspect. I studied him. He was frightened now, defensive and desperate to deflect suspicion. Guilty? Possibly. Or just a privileged kid facing consequences for the first time. One more question. What was Roland researching in the library archives? What? 3 days before he died, Roland spent time in the library archives, researching something that frightened him. What was it? I have no idea. Roland didn't share his research with me. We barely spoke unless forced to. Think. Did he say anything unusual in the days before his death? Ask strange questions? Act differently? Gregory frowned, thinking. Yes. During orchestra rehearsal 2 days before he died, he kept staring at my father. Not hostile, just intense. Like he was trying to figure something out. My father noticed and asked what Roland's problem was. Roland said nothing and went back to practicing. But it was weird. Weird how? Like Roland knew something but wasn't sure whether to say it. He looked at my father the way you'd look at a puzzle you couldn't quite solve. Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Gregory. You can go. He stood quickly, relief evident. Are we finished? For now. Don't leave Hillford without letting Mrs. Pemberton know where you're going. Why would I leave? The autumn concert is Saturday. I'm the lighting captain. Just a suggestion. He left hurriedly, clearly rattled. I made notes while the interview was fresh. Gregory had motive, opportunity, and means. He also had an alibi, his parents, but family alibis were notoriously unreliable. He'd deflected toward Harrison and Raymond, which could be genuine or strategic, and Roland's strange behavior toward Raymond Ashford was significant. Margaret appeared 5 minutes later. Harrison Cathcart is here. Are you ready? Send him in. Harrison Cathcart was everything Judith and Margaret had described, and worse. He swaggered into the room like he owned it, dropped into the chair without being invited, and regarded me with undisguised contempt. He was perhaps 18, stocky and athletic, with close-cropped blonde hair, a thick neck, and the kind of face that suggested he'd been handsome before arrogance twisted it. You're the donor. His voice was aggressive, dismissive. Doesn't look like you have enough money to matter. Appearances deceive. You must be Harrison Cathcart. That's right. My grandfather runs this place, so whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. I'm not selling anything. I'm asking about Roland Kimber. His expression went ugly. That scholarship trash. What about him? He's dead. You hated him. I want to know why. I didn't hate him. I just knew what he was. A charity case, who didn't belong at Hillford. He should have stayed in Queens where he came from. Instead, he came here, dated Constance Merrill, and made you look like a fool. Must have been humiliating. Harrison's face flushed red. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll punch me like you punched Roland. How'd that work out for you? Oh right, he knocked you down. You needed medical attention, and everyone saw you lose to someone half your size. He shot to his feet, fists clenched. Get out of my school. Sit down, Harrison. Make me. I stood slowly, meeting his eyes. I'm taller than Harrison, leaner, and significantly more experienced in physical confrontation. He read that instantly and took a half-step back despite himself. Sit down. He sat, fury radiating from him. You can't talk to me like this. My grandfather will have you thrown out. Your grandfather isn't here. I am. Now answer my questions, or I'll make sure everyone at Hillford knows exactly what kind of coward hides behind family connections. I'm not a coward. Then prove it. Tell me about Roland. He glared at me, breathing hard, then spoke through clenched teeth. Roland was a troublemaker, acted like being smart, made him special, walked around like he owned the place, dating girls who should have been with legacy students, talking back to faculty. Somebody needed to put him in his place. So you tried to? I taught him respect. By punching him, he insulted my family, called my grandfather a corrupt oligarch in front of half the student body. You don't disrespect the Cathcarts. And 3 weeks later, Roland died. Convenient timing. Harrison's eyes widened. You think I killed him? You had motive. He humiliated you and dated the girl you wanted. You had opportunity. Friday evening, empty building, no witnesses. You have a history of violence. Seems pretty straightforward. I didn't kill him. The fury was mixed with genuine fear now. I wasn't anywhere near the music hall Friday night. I was at the library with friends. Angela Fletcher, Timothy Morse, half a dozen others. Ask them. Angela had permission to skip lighting duty for her grandmother's birthday. Timothy found Roland's body. Those are your alibis. There were others. Peter Howell, Roland's roommate. He was there too. We were studying for a chemistry exam. Professor Lattimore's class, Monday morning. Everyone can confirm it. How convenient that your alibi includes Roland's roommate and both of the other lighting crew members. It's not convenient. It's true. Look, I hated Roland, okay? I thought he was arrogant scum who didn't deserve to be at Hillford. But I didn't kill him. I'm not stupid enough to murder someone at my own school. Just stupid enough to beat them up in front of witnesses. His jaw worked. That was different. That was a mistake. My grandfather made me apologize, said I needed to control my temper. I've been keeping my head down since then. No incidents, no trouble. I didn't kill Roland. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. He was frightened, defensive, and possibly telling the truth. The library alibi could be verified, but Harrison clearly knew something he wasn't saying. What do you know about Roland's research in the archives? What research? He was in the library archives a few days before he died, looking into something that frightened him. What was it? How should I know? I didn't keep track of what Roland did. But you were in the library that Friday night. You must have seen him before. Maybe. I don't remember. The library's big. Lots of students use it. Roland wasn't exactly someone I paid attention to, unless forced. Try harder. Think back over the past month. Did Roland say or do anything unusual? Confront anyone? Ask strange questions? Harrison scowled, thinking. There was one thing. About a week before he died, I saw him arguing with Raymond Ashford outside the music hall. Heated argument. Roland looked angry. Raymond looked worried. I couldn't hear what they said, but Roland was waving some kind of document. Then Raymond grabbed it and walked away. Roland looked like he wanted to chase him but didn't. What kind of document? I don't know. Papers, maybe photocopies. Old-looking, yellowed, could have been anything. This matched Gregory's observation about Roland staring at Raymond during rehearsal. Whatever Roland had discovered involved Raymond Ashford. Anything else? No. Can I leave now? One more thing. If you didn't kill Roland, who did? He hesitated. I don't know, but if you're looking for people desperate enough to kill, look at Raymond. The man's obsessed with his reputation. If Roland threatened that, exposed something damaging, Raymond would do anything to protect himself. Second time someone had pointed toward Raymond Ashford. Interesting. All right, you can go. Harrison stood quickly, eager to escape. At the door he paused and looked back. For what it's worth, I'm glad Roland's dead. He was a problem, and now he's not. But I didn't kill him, and whoever did is still here, walking around like nothing happened. That should worry you. He left. I sat back, processing everything. Both Gregory and Harrison had deflected toward Raymond Ashford. Both had mentioned Roland's unusual behavior in the days before his death, and both had confirmed that Roland had discovered something in the archives, something documented, something threatening enough to frighten him and worry Raymond. Margaret returned. How did it go? Harrison's a thug, but he might not be a murderer. Claims he has an alibi, library, multiple witnesses, including Peter Howell and Timothy Morse. Can you verify that? Easily. I'll ask around. Also, I need to see Raymond Ashford immediately. He's the key to whatever Roland discovered. She winced. Raymond still refuses to meet, says he's too busy and you're wasting his time. Then I'll find him myself. Where's his office? Second floor, East Wing. But Mr. Goodwin, be careful. Raymond has influence here, and if you push too hard, I'll push as hard as necessary. Someone killed a 17-year-old kid and got away with it. I don't care who gets offended." She nodded, worry evident. "Constance Merrill is waiting. Should I send her in first?" "Please." Constance Merrill entered silently, moving like someone in shock. She was perhaps 16, slender and pale, with long auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and she clutched a wadded tissue in one hand. She wore the standard Hillford uniform, plaid skirt, white blouse, navy cardigan, but everything looked slightly disheveled, like she'd stopped caring about appearance. "Miss Merrill, I'm Archie Goodwin. Thank you for coming." She sat without speaking, staring at the table. I gave her a moment to compose herself. "I know this is difficult," I said gently. "I want you to know that I'm investigating Roland's death, because Headmistress Pemberton believes he was murdered. If you loved Roland, helping me find his killer is the best thing you can do for him." She looked up, eyes glistening. "He was murdered." "I know he was. Roland would never go on that catwalk. Never. He was terrified of heights, had nightmares about falling. Someone killed him, and everyone's pretending it was an accident. I believe you, and I'm going to prove it, but I need your help. What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with how you and Roland met." She took a shaky breath. "Last year, I was a sophomore. He was a junior. We both played in the orchestra. I'm a violinist. Roland was extraordinary. Not just talented, but passionate. He played like music was the only thing that mattered. I fell in love with him immediately." "How did your family react?" "My father was furious. He's on Hillford's board. Walter Merrill. He thought Roland was inappropriate, too poor, too outspoken. He forbade me from seeing him. I saw him anyway. We kept it quiet for months, but eventually people found out. That's when Harrison started causing trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "Threats, insults, vandalism. Harrison wanted me to date him. Our families have connections. Our fathers do business together. Harrison felt entitled to me. When I chose Roland instead, Harrison made Roland's life miserable. Notes in his locker, rumors spread around school, even damaged his piano music once, tore pages from his expensive sheet music collection." "Did Roland fight back?" "He tried to ignore it, but Harrison kept pushing, and Roland finally snapped. That fight 3 weeks ago, Harrison called Roland's mother terrible names, said she was a whore who raised a charity case. Roland punched him. I was proud of him." Her voice broke. I waited while she composed herself. "In the days before he died, did Roland seem different, worried, frightened?" "Yes." She looked up, desperate to be believed. Something was wrong. He kept saying he'd discovered something important, something that could change everything, but he wouldn't tell me what it was. Said it was too dangerous. He needed proof first. I begged him to go to Mrs. Pemberton, or even the police, but he said he had to be sure. Then he died, and whatever he knew died with him. Do you have any idea what he discovered? Something about Hillford, something in the archives, old records or documents. He spent hours there, taking notes, looking frightened. The last time I saw him, Wednesday afternoon, he said he was close to understanding. He looked excited and terrified at the same time. That was the last conversation we ever had." Her voice dissolved into tears. I gave her time, waiting patiently. "Did he mention anyone specifically? A name? A place? Anything?" She wiped her eyes. "He mentioned Raymond Ashford. Said Raymond had been lying for years, covering something up. But he wouldn't say what. He also mentioned a name I didn't recognize. Hillford Foundation. Said it wasn't what people thought." "Hillford Foundation? I don't know what it means, but Roland said following the money would explain everything." My mind raced. The Hillford Foundation would be the endowment, or scholarship fund, the financial arm of the school. If Roland had discovered financial impropriety, embezzlement or fraud, that would explain Raymond's worry and the institutional desire to bury the investigation. "One last question, Constance. Do you believe Harrison killed Roland?" She shook her head. "Harrison's cruel, but he's not smart enough or brave enough to plan a murder. Whoever killed Roland was clever and calculating. Harrison's neither of those things." "Then who?" "I don't know. But it was someone with access, someone who understood Roland's schedule, someone desperate enough to kill. And someone who's still here, pretending to grieve while sleeping soundly at night. She stood unsteadily. Find who did this, Mr. Goodwin. Roland deserved so much better than he got. He deserved to play at Juilliard, to become a great pianist, to escape this place. Instead, he's dead because someone couldn't let him expose the truth. I'll find them, I promise. She nodded and left, moving like a ghost. I sat alone, piecing together the puzzle. Roland had discovered something in the archives about the Hillford Foundation and Raymond Ashford. Something financial, something covered up for years. He'd confronted Raymond with documents, possibly copies of incriminating records. Raymond had taken the documents, worried and defensive. Days later, Roland was dead. It wasn't about teenage rivalry or romantic jealousy. It was about money, corruption, and institutional rot. Roland had stumbled onto something that threatened powerful people, and they'd killed him to keep it buried. Now I just had to prove it. And to do that, I needed to confront Raymond Ashford. I found Raymond Ashford in his office on the second floor, exactly where Margaret had indicated. The door was partially open, and through it I could see a cluttered space, lined with filing cabinets, music scores, and photographs of past orchestras. Raymond sat at his desk, writing furiously in a ledger, completely absorbed. I knocked once and entered without waiting for invitation. He looked up, startled and immediately irritated. "Who are you? This is a private office." "Archie Goodwin. We need to talk about Roland Kimber." His face went carefully blank. "I have nothing to say about that tragedy. The police have closed the investigation. Please leave." "Roland discovered something about you. Something in the Hillford archives. Something involving the Hillford Foundation. 3 days before he died, he confronted you with documents. You took them. Now he's dead." Raymond stood slowly, his face pale but controlled. He was perhaps 55, tall and spare, with thinning grey hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the austere look of someone who'd spent their life pursuing perfect pitch and finding only approximations. "Get out of my office. Not until you explain what Roland found." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Roland spent days in the archives, researching Hillford Foundation finances. He discovered something that frightened him and worried you. When he confronted you, you took his evidence. Then he died in your music hall, on your watch, using equipment from your program. Quite a coincidence." "It was an accident. The police said so." "The police were wrong. Roland was murdered, and you're involved. Whether you killed him yourself or know who did, you're going to tell me the truth. Now." He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking old and defeated. For 30 seconds he said nothing, staring at his desk. Then he spoke quietly. "I didn't kill Roland, but I know why he died. Tell me." He removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "It started 20 years ago. I'd just been hired as music director, young, ambitious, desperate to build Hillford's program into something special. The board wanted results but provided minimal funding. I needed money for instruments, sheet music, scholarships for talented students. The school's endowment was restricted, couldn't be touched for operating expenses. So I found another way." "Which was?" "The Hillford Foundation. Officially, it's a separate non-profit that raises funds for the school. Donations are tax-deductible and wealthy alumni contribute generously. The foundation then grants money to Hillford for specific programs, arts, athletics, scholarships." "Sounds legitimate." "It was, for years, but foundations have overhead, salaries, administrative costs, fundraising expenses, and the foundation's board, which I chaired, had discretion in how we managed those expenses. I saw where this was going. You embezzled. Not embezzled, redirected. The music program needed resources the school wouldn't provide, so I authorized foundation funds to cover expenses, instruments, travel for competitions, stipends for guest conductors. Nothing illegal, technically, but not what donors intended, and not what the foundation's charter permitted." "How much?" "Over 20 years. Approximately $300,000. I whistled softly. "That's substantial." It funded one of the finest high school music programs in America. Our students win national competitions. They attend prestigious conservatories. They become professional musicians. That's worth more than money. Tell that to the donors whose contributions you misappropriated." His face hardened. I never stole a penny for personal use. Every dollar went to students. My salary is modest, my lifestyle humble. I dedicated my career to these children, and if I bent some rules to give them opportunities they deserved, I don't apologize for that. How did Roland discover this? He was researching financial aid history for a paper on scholarship access at elite institutions. The archives contain foundation records going back decades. Donation receipts, grant allocations, board minutes. Roland had a good mind for numbers. He noticed discrepancies, foundation grants supposedly funding scholarships, but scholarship amounts not matching grant totals. He started digging deeper, comparing records, tracking expenditures. Eventually he figured it out and confronted you. Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before he died. He had copies of foundation documents showing unauthorized expenditures. He said it was embezzlement, that I'd betrayed donor trust, that he was taking it to Mrs. Pemberton and the board. I tried to explain, to make him understand that everything I'd done was for students like him, but he wouldn't listen, said corruption was corruption, regardless of motivation. He gave me 1 day to resign voluntarily. If I didn't, he'd expose everything. What did you do? I took the copies, practically ripped them from his hands, told him he was making a mistake, that he didn't understand how institutions work. He said he understood perfectly, people with power stealing from people without it. Then he left. That was the last time I saw him alive. Did you kill him? No, I swear to you, I didn't kill Roland. I was desperate, terrified of exposure, but not murderous. I thought about resigning, about destroying the evidence, about begging him to reconsider, but I never thought about killing him. Then who did? I don't know. He looked genuinely bewildered. When I heard about his death Friday night, my first thought was relief, horrible, shameful relief, that my secret would remain buried, then guilt, then confusion. Roland's death seemed too convenient, too perfectly timed, but I couldn't say anything without exposing myself. Does anyone else know about the foundation irregularities? My assistant Margaret handles some financial paperwork, but she wouldn't notice discrepancies. She's not trained in accounting. The foundation board meets quarterly, but they're all major donors who trust me implicitly. They approve budgets without detailed review. Who's on the foundation board? Myself as chairman, Bernard Cathcart, Walter Merrill, and 3 other alumni donors. Bernard especially has been generous. He's contributed over $500,000 over the years. Bernard Cathcart again. The board chairman Harrison's grandfather, major donor, and someone with considerable power over Hillford's operations. Does Bernard know about the misallocated funds? I don't see how he could. The records are complex, and Bernard doesn't involve himself in operational details. He writes checks and expects results. Unless Roland told him. Raymond went pale. Why would Roland tell Bernard? Revenge. Bernard tried to have him expelled after the Harrison fight. Maybe Roland wanted to destroy Bernard's carefully curated institution by exposing corruption at its highest levels. If Roland told Bernard, Raymond trailed off, realization dawning. Bernard would have been furious. His reputation, his family's legacy, his donations all tainted by association with embezzlement. If Bernard learned that hundreds of thousands of dollars had been misdirected, that scandal could destroy Hillford's fundraising for decades. Enough motive to kill. Bernard Cathcart is ruthless. I've seen him destroy faculty careers over minor disagreements. But murder? I can't believe it. Believe it. Someone killed Roland to protect a secret. You've just confirmed you had a secret worth protecting. Bernard Cathcart has the resources, influence, and temperament to do whatever necessary to preserve his legacy. If Roland threatened that, the office door burst open. A man in his 70s strode in, white-haired and barrel-chested, with the kind of commanding presence that comes from decades of getting exactly what he wants. He wore an expensive 3-piece suit and carried a leather-bound folder like a weapon. Raymond, what is this nonsense about? He stopped, seeing me. Who are you? Archie Goodwin. You must be Bernard Cathcart. His eyes narrowed. I've heard about you, the so-called donor asking inappropriate questions. You're not a donor at all, are you? Nope. I'm a private investigator working for Nero Wolfe. We've been hired to investigate Roland Kimber's murder. Murder. The police ruled it an accident. The police were wrong. Roland was pushed from that catwalk, and I'm going to prove it. Bernard's face flushed red. You have no authority here. This is private property, and I'm ordering you to leave immediately. Not yet. First, you're going to answer some questions about the Hillford Foundation and your knowledge of financial irregularities spanning 20 years. He looked at Raymond, fury evident. What have you told him? The truth, Raymond said quietly. Roland discovered the foundation expenditures. He was going to expose everything. Now he's dead. Someone killed him, Bernard, and whoever did it is still here. You fool. Bernard's voice was venomous. Do you have any idea what you've done? The damage you've caused? I've spent 40 years building Hillford into one of America's finest institutions, and you've been stealing from it the entire time. I wasn't stealing. You were embezzling. $300,000, Raymond. That's not redirecting. That's theft. And now this private detective knows everything. He turned to me. What do you want? Money? Silence can be purchased. I want the name of Roland Kimber's killer. I don't know who killed him, and frankly, I don't care. The boy was a troublemaker who should never have been admitted to Hillford. His death, however tragic, is not my concern. Even if someone in your institution committed murder, I don't believe anyone at Hillford killed him, and I certainly don't believe you'll find evidence to the contrary. Now leave, or I'll have security remove you forcibly. I stood, moving slowly. Bernard didn't back down. The man had titanium spine and zero fear. Admirable, in its way. I'm leaving, but I'll be back, probably with police detectives who'll want to examine foundation records in detail. Raymond's embezzlement is going to come out, Bernard. The only question is whether it comes out alongside a murder investigation or separately. Your choice. Get out. I left, passing Margaret in the hallway. She looked stricken, clearly having heard the confrontation. Is it true? She whispered. Raymond embezzled from the foundation? It's true, and Roland discovered it. That's why he died. Who killed him? I don't know yet, but I'll find out. I left Hillford Academy and caught a taxi back to West 35th Street. It was nearly 6 p.m. time to report to Wolfe and piece together everything I'd learned. The game was accelerating now. Raymond had motive and secret worth protecting. Bernard had power, influence, and demonstrated ruthlessness. Harrison had hatred and violent history. Gregory had opportunity and family complications. One of them had killed Roland Kimber. And tomorrow, Wolfe would figure out which. I arrived at the brownstone at 6:15, thoroughly soaked from rain that had intensified into a proper downpour. Fritz met me at the door with a towel and sympathetic look. Caesar, Mars, Apollo, Minerva, Diana, and Loyal all appeared to inspect my bedraggled state, decided I was still acceptable, and dispersed again to their various territories. Wolfe was in the office, working his way through the evening's first bottle of beer. I toweled off, hung my wet coat in the hall, and settled at my desk. You're late, he observed. I was confronting embezzlers and board chairmen. Time got away from me. Report. I gave him everything. Gregory's defensive deflection, Harrison's thuggish alibi, Constance's heartbreaking testimony, and most importantly, Raymond Ashford's confession and Bernard Cathcart's threatening fury. Wolfe listened without interruption, drinking beer and occasionally closing his eyes in concentration. When I finished, he sat silent for 2 full minutes, lips pushing in and out. Finally, he opened his eyes. The foundation embezzlement is motive, but insufficient by itself. Raymond's theft was ongoing for 20 years without detection. Roland's threat to expose it was serious but manageable. Raymond could have resigned quietly, claimed health issues, retired with dignity. Murder was extreme and unnecessary, unless something else was at stake. Like Bernard Cathcart's reputation. Possibly. Bernard's fury suggests genuine surprise at the embezzlement. If he'd known beforehand, he would have addressed it privately years ago. Bernard is many things, but he's not stupid. Allowing theft to continue undetected while serving on the foundation board makes him complicit. No. Bernard learned about the embezzlement recently, which means Roland told him. Precisely. Roland confronted Raymond Wednesday afternoon, took copies of incriminating documents, and gave Raymond 1 day to resign. But Roland also went to Bernard, either to report the theft or to use it as leverage against Harrison's grandfather. Bernard learned his carefully constructed institution was built on fraud, that his own donations had been misappropriated, that scandal was imminent, and killed Roland to prevent exposure? Wolfe's expression was thoughtful. Bernard Cathcart is 70 years old, wealthy, accustomed to delegating unpleasant tasks. If he wanted Roland dead, he wouldn't climb a ladder and push him off a catwalk. He'd hire someone or manipulate someone else into doing it. The question is who? Harrison's the obvious choice. Violent, stupid, obedient to his grandfather. Too obvious. Harrison lacks subtlety. Pushing Roland from a catwalk and staging it as accidental requires planning, timing, and intelligence. Harrison has none of those qualities. Also, his alibi, studying in the library with multiple witnesses, appears solid. Gregory, then, smart enough to plan it, access to the music hall, knows Roland's schedule. Also possible, but Gregory's motive is weak. Professional rivalry and public criticism aren't sufficient to drive a middle-class teenager to murder, unless, Wolfe paused, unless Gregory was protecting his father. Raymond faces criminal charges, disgrace, imprisonment. A devoted son might kill to prevent that. You think Gregory killed Roland to save Raymond? It's plausible. Gregory had opportunity. He admits being in the music hall Friday evening until 7, which places him there within the estimated time of death. His alibi is his parents, which is worthless. He's intelligent enough to forge the duty roster and stage the accident convincingly, and he's desperate enough. Juilliard admission, his father's career, his family's reputation, all threatened by Roland's investigation. I considered. It made sense. Gregory was the lighting captain, knew the equipment, understood the music hall's layout. He could have lured Roland there under some pretext, attacked him on the stage, carried him up the ladder while unconscious, and pushed him. The bruising on Roland's shoulders could be from the assault, not the fall. How do we prove it? We expose the inconsistencies and force a confession. But first, I need one more piece of information. Tomorrow morning you'll return to Hillford and examine the library archives. Find what Roland found, the specific foundation documents that revealed the embezzlement. I want to know exactly what he discovered and when. Bernard will have me thrown out the moment I arrive. Then be circumspect. Visit early, before administrative offices open. Margaret Wu has keys, correct? Convince her to let you in. She won't risk her job. She will, if she wants Roland's killer caught. Appeal to her conscience and her intelligence. Also interview Peter Howell, Roland's roommate. He found the threatening notes, which suggests he was close to Roland. He may know details Roland didn't share with others. What will you do? Think. The pieces are present, but the pattern remains unclear. Someone killed Roland Kimber, staged it as an accident, and nearly succeeded in escaping justice. That person made mistakes. They always do. I need to identify those mistakes and use them to force the truth. Fritz appeared to announce dinner. We proceeded to the dining room, where Fritz had prepared lamb chops with rosemary, roasted potatoes, spring peas, and a salad that looked like it had been composed by an artist. Wolfe ate with his usual focused appreciation, barely speaking. I knew better than to interrupt. He was thinking, processing, building his case. Over coffee, he finally spoke again. The threatening notes are significant, not because of their content. Generic hostility tells us nothing, but because of their timing. They appeared after the Harrison fight, which suggests someone wanted to drive Roland away through intimidation, but Roland didn't frighten easily, so the notes failed. The killer needed a permanent solution. Meaning the notes and the murder are connected? Almost certainly. The handwriting was deliberately disguised, but the psychology is consistent. Someone who wanted Roland gone, who escalated from threats to violence when threats proved insufficient. Harrison wrote the notes. Unlikely. Harrison confronts directly. Fists, insults, physical dominance, passive-aggressive notes don't fit his temperament. No, the notes came from someone intelligent enough to recognize that direct confrontation would fail. Someone who understood Roland's personality and knew threats would only make him more determined. Gregory? Possible, though it could also be someone we haven't yet considered. That's why you must interview Peter Howell. Roommates share confidences, and Roland may have mentioned suspicions about the note's author. I nodded, making mental notes. Tomorrow would be crucial. Archives research, witness interviews, possibly confrontation with Bernard if he tried to interfere. After dinner, I spent 2 hours typing up my report while Wolfe read a book on Central American orchids. At 11, I went up to bed, brain buzzing with suspects and motives. At 3 a.m., the house phone rang, the direct line that only clients and close associates use. I grabbed it, instantly awake. Goodwin. Mr. Goodwin, it's Judith Pemberton. Her voice was tight with fear. I'm at Hillford. Something's happened. What? The library archives. Someone broke in tonight and destroyed records, filing cabinets overturned, documents burned in the fireplace, years of materials ruined. Whoever did it was looking for Roland's foundation evidence. They're covering their tracks. When did this happen? Campus security discovered it an hour ago during rounds. The fire was still smoldering. I came immediately. Have you called police? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Mr. Goodwin, whoever killed Roland is panicking. They know someone's investigating and they're destroying evidence. What should I do? Call the police now. Report it as vandalism. Don't mention murder or investigations. Just say valuable historical documents were destroyed. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Please hurry. I hung up and went downstairs to wake Wolfe. He answered his bedroom intercom immediately. He sleeps lightly when cases are active. Archie? The archives at Hillford have been vandalized. Someone burned Roland's foundation evidence. Judith wants to know what to do. Silence for 10 seconds. Then tell her to secure the scene and summon police. You'll go immediately. I'll contact Saul and have him meet you there. Extra eyes may prove useful. Also tell Judith to compile a list of everyone with keys to the library. The killer accessed those archives within hours of your confrontation with Raymond and Bernard. That suggests either panic or coordination. You think they're working together? I think someone is very frightened of what we'll discover. Go. Report back when you've assessed the damage. I dressed quickly, called Saul Panzer and filled him in, then headed out into the rain. The streets were empty at this hour, and the taxi made good time to Riverside Drive. Hillford Academy looked different at night. Darker, more gothic, almost sinister in the rain. Police cars were parked outside, lights flashing. I paid the taxi and headed in. Judith met me in the entrance hall, looking exhausted and frightened. 2 uniformed officers were taking notes, and campus security, a tired-looking man in his 60s, was answering questions. Mr. Goodwin, thank God. Judith grabbed my arm. It's horrible. 20 years of records, just destroyed. Show me. She led me to the second floor, to a large room lined with fireproof filing cabinets and wooden shelves. One entire section had been ransacked. Cabinets tipped over, papers scattered, and worst of all, a stone fireplace in the corner filled with charred remains of documents. The smell of smoke lingered. Saul Panzer arrived as I was examining the damage. He's small, nondescript, and the best operative I know. Observes everything, misses nothing, thinks like Wolfe without the orchids and beer. Archie, Miss Pemberton. He nodded to both of us, then studied the room. Recent fires still warm. One person, working quickly, knew exactly what they wanted. Foundation documents, I said. Records Roland used to prove Raymond Ashford's embezzlement. Saul knelt near the fireplace, examining ash carefully, without touching anything. They burned financial records, correspondence, ledgers, but they missed something. He pointed to a corner near the overturned cabinet. I looked. A single page, partially hidden under debris. A photocopied bank statement from the Hillford Foundation, dated 1947, showing a deposit of $50,000 from Bernard Cathcart, with notation, Music Program Endowment. Next to it, a grant allocation form showing only $30,000 disbursed, with $20,000 marked administrative expenses. I picked it up carefully. This is what Roland found. Proof that foundation money was redirected. More than that, Saul said. Look at the signature on the grant form. I looked. Raymond Ashford's signature authorizing the expenditure. But below it, another signature approving the allocation. Bernard Cathcart, Foundation Board Chairman. Bernard knew, I said slowly. He approved the misallocations. He wasn't just a victim of Raymond's embezzlement. He was complicit. Saul nodded, which means Bernard has even more motive. If Roland exposed the foundation fraud, Bernard faces criminal charges. He's not some innocent donor. He's an accomplice. Judith had gone pale. Bernard Cathcart? Are you saying Bernard killed Roland? Or arranged it? I said. Bernard has resources, connections, and complete moral flexibility. If he needed Roland dead to protect himself, he'd make it happen. One of the police officers approached. Ma'am, we'll need full statements from anyone with access to these archives. Can you provide names? Of course. Judith pulled out a notebook. Keys are held by myself, the head librarian Mrs. Fletcher, the senior custodian Mr. Davis, and selected faculty, including Raymond Ashford. And the students, do any have access? Not officially, but keys are kept in the administrative office. Someone could have borrowed them without authorization. The officer made notes and continued his questions. I pulled Saul aside. Someone's very nervous. First Raymond's confrontation yesterday afternoon, then this tonight. They're scrambling to destroy evidence. Which means they know you're investigating. Which means I've been seen, identified, and recognized as a threat. That puts Judith at risk too. And anyone else who helps you. Saul frowned. This is getting dangerous, Archie. Whoever killed Roland won't hesitate to kill again if cornered. Then we corner them quickly, before they have time to plan another murder. We searched the archives for another hour, but found nothing else. The killer had been thorough. Only that one bank statement had survived, likely kicked under debris during the chaos. It was enough, though. Proof that Bernard was involved in the foundation fraud and therefore had massive motive to silence Roland. At 5:30 a.m. I called the brownstone. Wolfe answered immediately. He rises at 6 but is often awake earlier. Archie? The archives are destroyed, but we found one document, proof that Bernard Cathcart approved foundation misallocations 20 years ago. He wasn't just a donor, he was complicit in the embezzlement. That makes him the primary suspect, or the primary target of blackmail. If Roland discovered Bernard's involvement, he could have demanded silence about his own investigation in exchange for keeping Bernard's secret. You think Roland was blackmailing Bernard? I think we don't yet know the full picture. Return home. I need to think further. I hung up and found Judith. Go home. Get some sleep. Don't go anywhere alone. And if anyone contacts you about the investigation, tell me immediately. What are you going to do? Catch a murderer. Saul and I left together, grabbing a taxi back to Manhattan as dawn broke grey and wet over the city. At the brownstone, Fritz had coffee ready. Bless him, and Wolfe was already in the office, 3/4 through his first bottle of beer. The vandalism confirms several things, Wolfe said when we'd settled. First, the killer knows we're investigating and feels threatened. Second, they have access to Hillford's facilities at night. Third, they're willing to take significant risks to destroy evidence. And fourth, most importantly, they made a critical error. What error? I asked. They destroyed the archives, but missed the most important evidence, Roland Kimber himself. Roland made copies of foundation documents and confronted both Raymond and Bernard. But where are those copies now? Not in the archives, those were originals. Not in Raymond's possession. He took copies from Roland, but wouldn't have destroyed his own filing system. So where? Roland's room, Saul said immediately. His personal belongings. He would have hidden evidence somewhere safe. Precisely. Archie, you said Roland's roommate Peter Howell collected his belongings after death. Contact Peter. Find those documents. They're the key to everything. It's 6 a.m., too early to call a teenager. Then go to Hillford and wake him. Time is critical. The killer has destroyed the archives. They'll soon realize Roland's personal effects remain vulnerable. We must reach them first. I gulped coffee, grabbed my coat, and headed back out into the rain. Saul came with me. 2 investigators working together move faster and safer than one alone. The taxi dropped us at Hillford at 6:45. The building was waking up, lights appearing in windows, early rising students heading to breakfast. We found the dormitory without difficulty, a separate wing on the 3rd floor, rooms lining both sides of a long corridor. Room 317 was near the end. I knocked firmly. After a moment, a sleepy voice answered. What? Peter Howell? This is Archie Goodwin. I need to talk to you about Roland Kimber. It's urgent. The door opened. Peter was perhaps 17, tall and gangly, with dark curly hair sticking up at odd angles and the dazed expression of someone recently awakened. He wore pajamas, and squinted at us suspiciously. "Who are you?" "Archie Goodwin. This is Saul Panzer. We're investigating Roland's death. Mrs. Pemberton hired us. Can we come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The room was typical teenage dormitory. 2 beds, 2 desks, bookshelves, posters on walls. One side was neat and organized, the other chaotic and empty. Roland's side cleared of his belongings. "What do you want?" Peter asked, sitting on his bed. "Roland's personal effects. You collected them after he died. Where are they?" "I gave everything to his mother. She came last Saturday, took his clothes, books, music, everything. Why?" My heart sank. If Roland's mother had taken everything, the evidence could be anywhere, packed in boxes, stored in an attic, possibly even discarded. Did Roland have any papers? Documents, photocopies, research materials? Sure, he was always taking notes, making copies of stuff from the library. He had a whole folder of papers about Hillford history. Where's that folder now? I gave it to his mother. She took everything. Peter, this is critical. Did you look through that folder? Did you see what Roland was researching? He shrugged. Not really. Financial stuff. Boring. Old bank statements and ledgers. Roland said he was working on a history paper, but it looked more like accounting. Do you have a phone number for Roland's mother? Mrs. Kimber? Yeah, I have her address in Queens. She invited me to visit any time, said I was Roland's best friend. His voice broke slightly. I haven't gone yet. Can't face it. He found the address and wrote it down. I took it gratefully. One more thing. The threatening notes you found in Roland's locker. When exactly did you find them? Saturday morning, after I heard he died. I went to his locker to get his music folder. Thought his mother would want it. The notes were stuffed in the back behind his sheet music, like someone had shoved them there quickly. Were they folded? Yeah, folded in thirds, like they'd been in envelopes originally. Did you see envelopes? No, just the notes. Saul had been examining Roland's side of the room carefully. Now he spoke. The locker, where is it? Music hall basement. All the musicians have lockers there. Can you show us? Peter dressed quickly and led us downstairs, through empty corridors, into the music hall, and down a narrow staircase to the basement. Rows of metal lockers lined the walls, each labeled with a name. Roland's locker was in the back corner, door slightly ajar. I didn't lock it, Peter said. Didn't seem important. Saul opened it fully. Inside was empty, except for a few scattered papers and a broken pencil. He examined the interior carefully, then pointed to scratches near the lock. Someone forced this. Recently, the marks are fresh. They were looking for something. The notes? I asked. Or more evidence? Peter, you said the notes were folded in thirds. Did they have names on them? Addresses? Any markings? No, just the messages. But they smelled weird. Weird how? Like cologne. Men's cologne. Expensive. I noticed because Roland never wore cologne. Said it was pretentious. But whoever wrote these notes used cologne, and it got on the paper. Saul and I exchanged glances. Cologne was distinctive, potentially traceable. If we could identify the scent, we might identify the note writer. Can you describe the smell? Saul asked. Sort of woody, spicy. My uncle wears something similar. He works on Wall Street, always smells fancy. Would you recognize it if you smelled it again? Maybe. I don't know. We thanked Peter and headed back to the main floor. Students were arriving for breakfast, filling the halls with noise and movement. We slipped out unnoticed and caught a taxi. We need that folder, I said to Saul, and we need to talk to Gregory and Bernard again, this time about cologne. Bernard especially. Expensive cologne fits someone who wears $1,000 suits. We returned to the brownstone at 8:30. Wolfe was having breakfast, shirred eggs, sausages and brioche. We reported our findings while Fritz brought us coffee and toast. The evidence is in Queens, Wolfe said when we'd finished. Archie, go there immediately and retrieve it. Saul, I need you to research Bernard Cathcart's background, financial records, business dealings, any hint of prior criminal behavior. Also determine what cologne he wears. If Peter can identify the scent, we have physical evidence connecting Bernard to the threatening notes. The cologne could belong to anyone, I pointed out. true, but combined with motive, opportunity, and access, it becomes significant. The killer wrote those notes, forced Roland's locker after his death, searching for evidence, vandalized the archives last night, and is now growing desperate. We must move faster than they can. Fritz brought more coffee. Caesar padded in, inspected our breakfast, and settled near Wolfe's desk. The big Doberman had taken to spending more time in the office lately, as if sensing the case's importance. I finished eating, collected the Queen's address, and headed out for the third time that morning. I was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline, but Roland's mother deserved answers. And we were close now, very close. The case was accelerating toward its conclusion. And at Hillford Academy, a killer was running out of time. The address Peter had given me was in Astoria, Queens, a modest neighborhood of brick apartment buildings, small shops and working-class families. I found the Kimber residence on the third floor of a walk-up on Steinway Street. The building was clean but aged, hallways narrow, stairs creaking under my weight. I knocked on apartment 3B. After a moment, the door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, small and tired, wearing a simple house dress and apron. She had Roland's eyes, dark, intelligent, wary. "Mrs. Kimber?" "Yes?" "My name is Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe, the private detective. Headmistress Pemberton hired us to investigate your son's death. May I come in?" Her face went through several emotions: surprise, hope, grief, suspicion. Finally, she stepped aside. "Please." The apartment was tiny but immaculate. A living room with worn furniture, a kitchen visible through an open doorway, family photographs covering every surface. Roland featured prominently: school pictures, concert performances, a recent photo of him at a piano, looking serious and focused. "Would you like coffee?" she asked. "Please." She disappeared into the kitchen. I studied the photographs. Roland at 7, gap-toothed and grinning at a battered upright piano. Roland at 12, receiving some kind of academic award. Roland at 16, in Hillford uniform, looking confident and determined. A life documented in images, now ended at 17. Mrs. Kimber returned with coffee in mismatched mugs. We sat, and she studied me carefully. "Mrs. Pemberton thinks Roland was murdered." "She does, so do we. The police ruled it accidental, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Your son was pushed from that catwalk, Mrs. Kimber. And whoever did it is still at Hillford, walking free." Her hands trembled slightly. I knew it wasn't an accident. Roland would never climb that high. He had nightmares about falling, ever since he was little. But the police wouldn't listen, said I was a grieving mother, looking for someone to blame. "You're a grieving mother who knows her son. That's different." She nodded, eyes glistening. "What do you need from me?" "Roland's personal effects." Peter Howell said, "You collected everything from his dormitory room. Specifically, we need a folder of documents Roland had been researching, financial records from Hillford's archives." "The folder? Yes, I have it. I haven't looked through it. Couldn't bring myself to. But I knew it was important to Roland. He mentioned working on something significant, something that frightened him." She set down her coffee. "Wait here." She disappeared into a back room. I heard drawers opening, boxes being moved. 5 minutes later, she returned carrying a manila folder bulging with papers. "This is everything." Roland kept it hidden under his mattress. Peter found it there when packing his belongings. I opened the folder carefully. Inside were photocopied bank statements, grant allocation forms, board meeting minutes, financial reports, everything documenting 20 years of Hillford Foundation irregularities. Roland had been thorough, methodical, building an airtight case of embezzlement and fraud. But one document stood out: a handwritten letter, dated October 11th, 3 days before Roland died. I read it carefully. "Headmistress Pemberton, I'm writing this as insurance. If something happens to me, I want the truth known. I've discovered that Raymond Ashford, our music director, has been embezzling from the Hillford Foundation for 20 years. He's redirected over $300,000 meant for scholarships into music program expenses, instruments, travel, stipends. The theft was enabled by Bernard Cathcart, board chairman, who approved the misallocations while serving on the foundation board. I confronted Raymond Wednesday, Oct. 11th. He took my evidence and threatened me. I then went to Bernard, thinking he'd want to stop the theft. I was wrong. Bernard wasn't surprised. He was furious at Emin for discovering it. He said I was a troublemaker who'd destroy Hillford, that scholarship students should be grateful for opportunities and keep their mouths shut. He told me to forget everything I'd found or face consequences. I refused. I told him I'd take this to the police, to newspapers, to anyone who'd listen. He said I'd regret that decision. That was yesterday. Today I'm scared. Bernard Cathcart is powerful, vindictive, and completely without conscience. If he killed to protect his secret, I want this letter found. If I die in some accident, investigate Bernard Cathcart. He's the one who wanted me silenced. Roland Kimber, October 12, 1955. My hands were shaking. This was it, a confession written by the victim himself, naming his killer, explaining motive, predicting his own death. It was extraordinary and damning. Mrs. Kimber, did Roland mail this letter to anyone? I don't know. He must have kept the original, since this is with his papers. He probably planned to send it but ran out of time. He died 2 days after writing this. She was crying silently. I gave her a moment, then continued gently. Your son was brave, Mrs. Kimber. He discovered corruption at the highest levels of Hillford Academy and refused to let it continue. Men with far more resources and protection would have looked away. Roland didn't. That takes courage. It got him killed, she said bitterly. Yes, but it also ensures he'll be remembered as someone who stood up to power, and it gives us everything we need to prove Bernard Cathcart murdered him. Will he go to prison? If there's justice in this world, yes. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Take the folder, use it. Make sure everyone knows what Roland discovered and why he died. He deserves that. He'll get it, I promise. I stood, carefully securing the folder. At the door I paused. Mrs. Kimber, your son wrote in his Juilliard essay that music was freedom from poverty, and that you taught him dignity isn't negotiable. He learned well. He lived those principles until the very end. You should be proud. I am. Her voice broke. I just wish he was still here. So do I. I left her crying in that small apartment, surrounded by photographs of her murdered son. The injustice of it burned. A talented kid from Queens, killed by a wealthy oligarch to protect institutional reputation. Roland had been right about everything. Hillford valued pedigree over merit, protected the powerful while discarding the vulnerable, and demanded silence in exchange for opportunity. But Roland hadn't stayed silent, and neither would we. I caught a taxi back to Manhattan, clutching the folder like it contained proof of original sin, which in a way it did. At the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office with Saul, surrounded by papers and looking grimly satisfied. Caesar remained near Wolfe's desk. While Mars had taken up position by the door, the dog seemed to sense we were approaching the case's climax. Archie, did you get it? I held up the folder. Everything, including a letter Roland wrote the day before he died, naming Bernard Cathcart as his killer. Wolfe's eyebrows rose. Show me. I handed over Roland's letter. Wolfe read it twice, slowly, lips pushing in and out. Then he set it down carefully. This is remarkable, prophetic, incriminating, and legally valuable. With this letter we can demonstrate Bernard had motive, knowledge, and opportunity. We can prove he threatened Roland. We can establish premeditation. So we take this to the police? Not yet. The letter is circumstantial. It proves threat but not murder. Bernard will claim Roland misunderstood their conversation, that he meant only to discourage investigation, not to threaten violence. We need more. We need physical evidence connecting Bernard to the actual crime. Saul spoke up. I've been researching Bernard Cathcart. His cologne is custom-made, exclusive blend from a midtown haberdashery. Costs $200 per bottle. The scent includes sandalwood, cedar, and black pepper, matches Peter's description of the threatening note smell. That's physical evidence, I said. It's suggestive, Wolfe corrected, but paired with the letter, it becomes compelling. Bernard wrote those notes, forced Roland's locker, vandalized the archives. He's been the driving force behind all attempts to silence Roland and destroy evidence. So we bring him here and confront him. We bring everyone here and confront them all. This case requires theatrical resolution, Archie. We'll assemble all parties involved, present the evidence systematically, and force Bernard to crack. He's arrogant enough to think he can talk his way out. We'll prove otherwise. I grinned. This was Wolfe at his best. The big reveal, the gathered suspects, the methodical destruction of lies and alibis. Very satisfying. When? Tonight, 6 o'clock. Invite Judith Pemberton, Raymond Ashford, Gregory Ashford, Bernard Cathcart, Harrison Cathcart, Constance Merrill, Margaret Wu, and Peter Howell. Tell them I have information about Roland's killer and expect full cooperation. Also invite Inspector Kramer. He should be present for the confession. Bernard won't come. He will. Tell him if he refuses, I'll deliver Roland's letter to newspapers and police simultaneously. His reputation will be destroyed by morning. Pride and self-preservation will bring him here. I reached for the phone. This was going to be one hell of a confrontation. And by the end of it, Roland Kimber would have justice. Getting everyone to the brownstone by 6 o'clock required 2 hours of phone calls, threats and persuasion. Judith Pemberton agreed immediately. Raymond Ashford resisted, until I mentioned that his cooperation might influence whether embezzlement charges were filed. Gregory came reluctantly, Margaret Wu professionally, Peter Howell nervously. Harrison Cathcart required his grandfather's permission, which Bernard granted only after I read him 2 sentences from Roland's letter. Bernard Cathcart is powerful, vindictive, and completely without conscience. If he killed to protect his secret, I want this letter found. Bernard's response was icy. You're making a serious mistake, Mr. Goodwin. I'll be there at 6. Bring your accusations. I'll bring my attorney. Bring whoever you want. The truth doesn't need a lawyer. Constance Merrill's father, Walter, answered when I called their residence. He was hostile until I mentioned that his daughter's testimony might help convict Roland's killer. He grudgingly agreed to bring her. Inspector Kramer was the easiest call. I've known him for years. We have a complicated relationship, built on mutual respect and frequent irritation. He trusts Wolfe's judgment even when he hates Wolfe's methods. You're saying Nero Wolfe has solved the Kimber case? He has. We have physical evidence, witness testimony, and a written statement from the victim naming his killer. You'll want to be here when we present it. This better not be another one of his theatrical wastes of time. It's not. 6 o'clock, Inspector. Don't be late. He hung up, grumbling but committed. By 5:30, everything was arranged. Fritz had set up the office to accommodate 9 guests, the red leather chair for primary witnesses, yellow chairs arranged in a semicircle facing Wolfe's desk, and 2 additional chairs from the front room for overflow. Saul arrived at 5:45 to provide additional security and observe reactions. The dogs patrolled restlessly, sensing tension. Wolfe descended from the plant rooms at 6 precisely, surveyed the assembled furniture with mild distaste, and settled behind his desk. Fritz brought beer. I took my position at my desk, notebook ready. The guests arrived in clusters. Judith Pemberton came first, looking determined and frightened. Margaret Wu arrived with Raymond and Gregory Ashford, a family unit, defensive and wary. Peter Howell came alone, wide-eyed and nervous. Constance Merrill arrived with her father Walter, a hard-faced man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Harrison Cathcart and Bernard arrived last, at 6:07. Bernard was exactly as I'd imagined from descriptions. White-haired, barrel-chested, commanding presence, expensive 3-piece suit, and the kind of arrogance that comes from never being told no. He carried a leather briefcase and radiated barely controlled fury. Harrison followed like an attack dog awaiting orders. As they entered, Caesar rose from his position near Wolfe's desk and moved to the office doorway, blocking it. Mars materialized beside him. Apollo, Minerva and Diana appeared in the hallway behind them. Loyal, the pit bull, positioned himself near the front door. The message was clear. No one was leaving until Wolfe permitted it. Bernard stared at the dogs, then at Wolfe. Is this intimidation necessary? It's security, Wolfe said calmly. My dogs are well trained and will remain peaceful unless someone becomes violent. Please sit. Bernard chose the red leather chair without being invited. Power move. Harrison took a yellow chair beside him. The others arranged themselves in the remaining seats. Walter Merrill kept Constance close, protective. Raymond sat between Gregory and Margaret, looking like a man facing execution. Peter perched on the edge of his chair, ready to bolt. Judith stood near the bookshelves, too agitated to sit. Inspector Kramer arrived at 6:12, accompanied by Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins. Kramer was 60, grey-haired, bull-necked, and perpetually skeptical of Wolfe's methods. Stebbins was younger, quieter, more observant. The dogs knew them both. Kramer had been to the brownstone dozens of times over the years, and Caesar's tail moved fractionally. Not quite a wag, but recognition. "Wolfe," Kramer said by way of greeting, "this better be good." "It's conclusive, Inspector. Please sit." Kramer took a yellow chair. Stebbins remained standing near the door, notebook ready. The office was crowded now, tense, everyone watching Wolfe expectantly. Wolfe surveyed them all, then began. "You're here because Roland Kimber was murdered on Friday, October 14th, at approximately 7:45 p.m., pushed from a catwalk in Hillford Academy's music hall. The police ruled it accidental death. That determination was incorrect. Roland was murdered, and I can prove it." "This is absurd," Bernard interrupted. "The police conducted a thorough investigation. If you have new evidence, present it to them, not to this circus." "I'm presenting it to everyone simultaneously, Mr. Cathcart, because several people in this room are implicated in either the murder or the attempted cover-up. You'll listen, or Inspector Kramer will compel you to listen. Your choice." Kramer nodded. "Keep talking, Wolfe." Wolfe drank beer, then continued. "Roland Kimber was killed because he discovered financial fraud at Hillford Academy, specifically embezzlement from the Hillford Foundation spanning 20 years. The theft totaled approximately $300,000, redirected from scholarship funds into unauthorized music program expenses. Two men were responsible for this fraud: Raymond Ashford, who authorized the expenditures, and Bernard Cathcart, who approved them as Foundation Board Chairman." Raymond went pale. Bernard's face flushed red. "That's a lie," Bernard said coldly. "I approved legitimate foundation grants in good faith. If Raymond misused those funds, that's his crime, not mine." "You approved grants that exceeded actual disbursements by consistent margins, Mr. Cathcart. 20,000 here, 30,000 there. Always marked administrative expenses. Over 20 years, those administrative expenses totaled $300,000. You signed every authorization. Either you're complicit in embezzlement or you're incompetent. Which would you prefer?" Bernard stood. "I don't have to tolerate these accusations. Harrison, we're leaving." Caesar growled, low, rumbling, unmistakable. Mars joined him. Bernard froze, staring at 200 pounds of Doberman muscle blocking his path. "Sit down, Mr. Cathcart," Wolfe said pleasantly. "My dogs are protective of this household's interests. They'll allow you to leave when I dismiss you, not before." "This is illegal detention. It's a private gathering where you're free to listen or face criminal charges. Inspector Kramer, would you care to comment?" Kramer smiled grimly. "Sit down, Mr. Cathcart. I want to hear what Wolfe has to say." Bernard sat slowly, fury barely contained. Harrison looked frightened for the first time. Wolfe continued. "Roland Kimber spent 2 weeks researching Hillford Foundation records in the school archives. He discovered the embezzlement, documented it thoroughly, and made photocopies of incriminating documents. On Wednesday, October 12th, he confronted Raymond Ashford with this evidence. Raymond took the copies and hoped the matter would disappear, but Roland didn't stop there. He went to Bernard Cathcart, believing the board chairman would want to stop the theft. "That meeting never happened," Bernard said. "It did. Roland confronted you Wednesday afternoon in your Hillford office. He told you about Raymond's embezzlement and your complicity. You responded with fury and threats. You told Roland he was a troublemaker who'd destroy Hillford, that scholarship students should be grateful and silent. When Roland refused to back down, you threatened him with consequences. Roland was sufficiently frightened that he wrote a letter documenting everything. A letter meant as insurance in case he died under suspicious circumstances." Wolfe gestured to me. I opened the folder and held up Roland's handwritten letter. "This is that letter, written October 12th, 2 days before Roland's death. He names both Raymond Ashford and Bernard Cathcart as embezzlers. More significantly, he names Bernard as the person who threatened him. I'll read the relevant passage." I read Roland's words aloud. The room went silent. Constance began crying quietly. Peter was staring at Bernard with horror. Raymond looked like he wanted to disappear. When I finished, Wolfe spoke again. "Roland predicted his own death, Mr. Cathcart. He knew you were dangerous. He was right." "That letter proves nothing," Bernard said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. A frightened teenager misinterpreting a conversation isn't evidence of murder. I told Roland to stop making trouble. I didn't threaten to kill him. Then explain the threatening notes. Wolfe nodded to me again. I produced the 3 notes Roland had received, now protected in clear plastic sleeves. Roland received anonymous notes after his altercation with Harrison Cathcart. Generic hostility, block-printed handwriting, blue ballpoint pen. But these notes had a distinctive characteristic. They smelled of expensive cologne. Peter Howell noticed it when he found them in Roland's locker. The scent was woody, spicy, with notes of sandalwood and black pepper. Very distinctive, very expensive. Saul spoke from his position near the window. "I've identified that cologne, Mr. Wolfe. It's a custom blend from Bancroft Haberdashery on 5th Avenue. $200 per bottle. Only 11 men in New York City purchase it regularly. Bernard Cathcart is one of them." Bernard's jaw tightened. Coincidence. Cologne isn't proof of anything. It's physical evidence linking you to threatening communications sent to a murder victim. Combined with your motive, protecting yourself from embezzlement charges, and your documented threat, it establishes a pattern. You tried to intimidate Roland into silence. When that failed, you killed him. "I didn't kill anyone." "Then who did?" Wolfe's voice was sharp. "Roland died within 48 hours of your threat. He died in a music hall where your grandson's friend Gregory Ashford was working. He died in a manner staged to look accidental. Someone with knowledge of Hillford's facilities, access to the music hall, and sufficient intelligence to plan a credible accident killed him. You had motive, means, and opportunity. I wasn't at Hillford Friday evening. I was at home with my wife, dining and reading. She'll confirm it. Spousal alibis are notoriously unreliable, Mr. Cathcart. But more importantly, I don't believe you personally pushed Roland from that catwalk. You're 70 years old, wealthy, accustomed to delegating unpleasant tasks. You had someone kill Roland for you." The room erupted. Harrison shot to his feet. "That's a lie. I didn't kill Roland." "Sit down, Harrison," Bernard snapped. "Did you order your grandson to kill Roland?" Wolfe asked calmly. Harrison had motive. He hated Roland, had fought with him, wanted Constance for himself. He's violent, impulsive, and desperate for your approval. Did you tell him that Roland was threatening the family, that eliminating him would protect the Cathcart name? "No." Harrison's voice cracked. "Grandfather didn't tell me to kill anyone. I was in the library Friday night. I told you that. I have witnesses." "Your alibi has been verified," Wolfe acknowledged. "Multiple witnesses place you in the library between 7 and 9 p.m. You didn't kill Roland personally, but someone did, on your grandfather's orders." Gregory Ashford stood abruptly. "Mr. Wolfe, please. My father made mistakes, serious mistakes, but he's not a murderer. Neither am I. We didn't kill Roland." "Sit down, Gregory," Raymond said quietly. "I won't sit down. Everyone thinks we killed him. We didn't. Yes, my father embezzled money. Yes, Roland discovered it. Yes, we were worried about exposure. But we didn't kill him." He turned to Wolfe, desperate. "You have to believe me. We're not murderers." Wolfe studied him. "I do believe you, Gregory. You and your father are thieves, not killers. Raymond lacks the nerve for murder, and you lack the ruthlessness. Neither of you killed Roland." "Then who did?" Gregory asked. "The person who had the most to lose. The person who couldn't afford investigation, exposure, or scandal. The person who wrote threatening notes, destroyed archive evidence, forced Roland's locker searching for documents, and staged a murder to look like an accident." Wolfe turned to Bernard. "You, Mr. Cathcart, not directly, but through an agent. Someone you manipulated, someone you convinced that killing Roland was necessary." "This is fantasy," Bernard said. "Pure speculation without evidence." "Then explain the archives. Someone vandalized them last night, burned foundation records, destroyed evidence. The vandalism occurred hours after Archie confronted you and Raymond about the embezzlement. Panic timing, Mr. Cathcart. The timing of someone who knows investigators are closing in. I was at home last night. My wife can confirm it. Again with the spousal alibi. But you weren't seen at Hillford. Security records show no entry under your name. The vandal used a key. Who at Hillford has keys to the archives and would follow your orders?" Silence. Everyone was staring at Bernard, who'd gone very still. Wolfe continued relentlessly. "You couldn't do it yourself. Too conspicuous. Too risky. You needed someone with legitimate access, someone who wouldn't be questioned, someone who already worked at Hillford in a position of trust. Margaret, Judith whispered, staring at the music director's assistant. Margaret Wu had gone white. She stood slowly, hands trembling. "No," she said. "No, I didn't." "You've been Raymond's assistant for 6 years," Wolfe said. "You handle his paperwork, including foundation documents. You have keys to the music hall, the archives, the administrative offices. You knew Roland's schedule, knew he'd discovered the embezzlement, knew he posed a threat to Raymond, your employer, the man who'd hired you and trusted you." "I didn't kill Roland," Margaret's voice rose. "I liked Roland. He was talented and kind but you were loyal to Raymond more, and when Bernard Cathcart approached you, told you that Roland was destroying Raymond's career, that exposure would mean criminal charges and disgrace, you agreed to help protect your employer." "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen, Miss Wu?" Wolfe's voice was gentler now. "Tell the truth. You're not a natural criminal. You're someone who made a terrible mistake under pressure, but the truth is your only hope now." Margaret was crying, shaking, looking around the room desperately. Raymond reached for her arm. "Margaret, don't say anything. We'll get lawyers." She jerked away from him. "No, I can't do this anymore. I can't." She turned to Wolfe, words spilling out in a rush. "Bernard came to me Thursday afternoon. Said Roland had evidence that would destroy Raymond. Send him to prison. Said the only way to protect Raymond was to stop Roland from talking. He said it would be easy. That Roland was working alone in the music hall Friday evening. That if someone surprised him on the catwalk, if he fell, it would look like an accident. He said I'd be saving Raymond's career, protecting Hillford's reputation, doing the right thing. I believed him. God help me. I believed him." The room was frozen. Margaret was sobbing now, barely coherent. "I went to the music hall at 7:30. Roland was on stage practicing. I told him I needed to show him something wrong with the lighting. He trusted me. Why wouldn't he? I'd always been kind to him. He followed me up the ladder to the catwalk. I pointed to a light fixture, said it was loose. While he was looking at it, I pushed him. He grabbed for the railing, but I pushed harder. He fell. The sound when he hit. I'll never forget that sound." Constance screamed. Peter buried his face in his hands. Judith was crying silently. "I climbed down," Margaret continued. "Put a wrench in his hand. Right hand, not left. I didn't know the difference. I was shaking so badly I could barely walk. I left through the back exit. I went home, threw my clothes in the incinerator, showered for an hour. I thought it was over. I thought I'd saved Raymond." She turned to Raymond, face twisted with anguish. "I killed him for you, to protect you. And you didn't even know. You didn't ask me to do it. I did it because Bernard said it was the only way." Raymond was staring at her in horror. "Margaret, what have you done? I saved you. You were going to prison. Your career was over. I couldn't let that happen. By murdering a child." Raymond's voice broke. "You killed a 17-year-old boy because Bernard Cathcart told you to." Margaret collapsed into her chair, broken and sobbing. Wolfe turned to Bernard. "You manipulated her perfectly, Mr. Cathcart. Found someone loyal, desperate and vulnerable, convinced her that murder was justified, that she was protecting someone she cared about. Classic manipulation by a man without conscience." Bernard was standing now, face contorted with fury. "You can't prove I told her to kill Roland. It's her word against mine. I'm a respected board chairman. She's a nobody, a secretary who snapped under pressure. No one will believe her." "I believe her," Inspector Kramer said. He'd moved closer during Margaret's confession, and now he was staring at Bernard with undisguised contempt. "I believe her because she has no reason to lie, because her confession matches the physical evidence, because the cologne on the threatening notes, the vandalized archives, the staged accident, all of it points to a conspiracy between you and her. It's not enough for charges. It's enough for investigation. It's enough to subpoena your phone records, question your family, examine your finances, and when we're finished, Mr. Cathcart, we'll have enough to charge you as an accessory to murder." Kramer gestured to Stebbins. "Arrest them both." Stebbins moved forward with handcuffs. Margaret didn't resist. She seemed almost relieved, but Bernard exploded. "This is outrageous. I'm Bernard Cathcart. I've donated millions to this city. You can't arrest me based on the ravings of a hysterical secretary. Watch me, Kramer said coldly. Caesar and Mars had moved closer, flanking Stebbins as he approached Bernard. The message was clear: resist and face the dogs. Bernard understood. He allowed himself to be cuffed, face purple with rage. You'll regret this, Wolfe. All of you. I'll destroy you. You've already destroyed yourself, Wolfe said. A 17-year-old boy discovered your crimes, confronted you with truth, and died because you couldn't tolerate exposure. That's what you'll be remembered for, Mr. Cathcart. Not your philanthropy, not your board service. Murder. Kramer led both prisoners toward the door. The dogs parted to let them through. As Bernard passed Constance, she spat at him. Roland was worth 10 of you, 100. He had more integrity in one finger than you've had in your entire miserable life. Bernard said nothing. He was marched out, and the sound of the front door closing was like a gunshot. The remaining guests sat in stunned silence. Finally, Judith spoke. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe. Roland deserves justice. Now he'll get it. Justice is what the legal system provides, Mrs. Pemberton. Roland deserved life. That, tragically, I cannot provide. Raymond stood unsteadily. I'm responsible for this. My embezzlement created the situation that got Roland killed. I'll resign immediately, make full restitution, face whatever charges follow. It's the least I can do. It's inadequate, Wolfe said, but it's appropriate. Leave. Raymond, Gregory, and Harrison departed silently. Walter Merrill took Constance home. Peter lingered, looking lost. Mr. Wolfe? Will they both go to prison? Margaret will certainly face charges. She confessed to first-degree murder. Bernard's case is more complex. Prosecutors will need to prove conspiracy, which requires demonstrating he specifically ordered Roland's death. It will be difficult but not impossible. The threatening notes, the vandalism timing, Margaret's testimony, all circumstantial but collectively damning. Roland was my best friend, Peter said quietly. I should have protected him. You were 17 years old, Mr. Howell. Protecting someone from determined killers isn't your responsibility. Mourning him, remembering him, honoring his courage, those are sufficient. Peter nodded and left. Only Judith remained. What happens to Hillford now? She asked. Board reorganization, financial audits, considerable scandal. But institutions survive. Students will continue learning, teachers will continue teaching, Hillford will adapt or collapse. Either outcome is appropriate. And me. You did the right thing, Mrs. Pemberton. You refused to accept the convenient lie, hired investigators despite institutional opposition, and ensured Roland's killer was caught. Many headmistresses would have prioritized reputation over justice. You didn't. That's commendable. She smiled wearily. It may cost me my job. Then you'll find another school, one that values integrity over image, if they exist. They do, rarely, but they do. She stood. Your fee, Mr. Wolfe? 25,000 plus expenses. Send a check when the board unfreezes funds. I will, thank you. After she left, I locked the front door and returned to the office. Wolfe had opened a fresh bottle of beer and was reading an orchid catalogue. The dogs had dispersed to their usual positions throughout the brownstone. The case was over. Satisfying conclusion, I said. Adequate. Bernard will hire expensive attorneys and fight the charges. Margaret's confession will be challenged as coerced. The trial will be long and ugly, but ultimately, justice will prevail. It usually does, despite considerable resistance. You feel sorry for Margaret. I feel contempt for Bernard. Margaret was a pawn, manipulated by someone far more sophisticated and ruthless. She made a terrible choice, but it was presented to her as righteous action. Bernard knew exactly what he was doing, destroying evidence, threatening witnesses, ordering murder. He's the true criminal. Both will go to prison. Yes, one deserves it. The other merely earned it. He drank more beer. Roland Kimber was extraordinary, Archie. 17 years old, confronting institutional corruption, refusing to be silenced despite threats and intimidation. Most adults lack such courage. He deserved decades of life, artistic achievement, the opportunity to become everything his talent promised. Instead, he's dead because he had the audacity to demand honesty from dishonest men. The world's full of Bernard Cathcarts. Unfortunately, It's also full of Roland Kimbers, people who refuse to accept injustice, who risk everything for truth. They're outnumbered, outspent, often killed for their principles, but they exist. That's why cases like this matter. I nodded, understanding. For all Wolfe's cynicism about human nature, he believed deeply in justice. He'd take any case, pursue any killer, confront any institution to ensure that courage like Roland's wasn't wasted. "Beer?" he asked. "Whiskey. It's been a long week." Fritz brought me a glass, and we sat in comfortable silence. The case closed, justice achieved, one more small victory against the darkness. Outside, rain continued falling on New York City. Inside, the brownstone was warm, safe, protected by bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, and 6 loyal dogs. And somewhere in Queens, Roland Kimber's mother was getting the phone call that would tell her why her son had died. It wouldn't bring him back, but it was something. The Hillford case made front-page news for 3 weeks. "Board chairman charged in student murder," screamed the Times. The Daily News went with "Rich man's plot to kill scholarship kid." Even the Herald Tribune, typically restrained, ran a scathing editorial about privilege, corruption, and institutional rot. Margaret Wu was arraigned on first-degree murder charges. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 20 years to life. Her attorney argued diminished capacity and manipulation, which reduced the sentence from what prosecutors had sought. She'd be eligible for parole in 2035. She'd be 65 years old. Bernard Cathcart fought the charges with every legal weapon money could buy. His attorneys argued that Margaret had acted independently, that Bernard's conversation with her was misunderstood, that the threatening notes could have been written by anyone. The trial lasted 8 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and found him guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 15 to 25 years. At 70, it was effectively a life sentence. Harrison Cathcart transferred to a Connecticut boarding school. Constance Merrill graduated Hillford and attended Sarah Lawrence. Peter Howell went to Columbia on scholarship, majoring in literature and dedicating his senior thesis to Roland's memory. Raymond Ashford resigned and pleaded guilty to embezzlement. He served 18 months in minimum security, paid full restitution from his savings, and was released in 1957. He never taught music again. Gregory Ashford was denied admission to Juilliard. He attended Boston University instead, studied business, and became an insurance adjuster. Not the career he'd imagined, but honest work. The Hillford Foundation was reorganized under court supervision. An independent audit revealed additional irregularities, nothing as dramatic as Raymond's theft, but enough to require substantial reforms. The board was rebuilt with new members committed to transparency. Judith Pemberton was offered the permanent headmistress position with expanded authority. She accepted and served for 20 more years, retiring in 1975, with Hillford's reputation slowly but steadily rebuilt. Mrs. Kimber received a settlement from Hillford, not court-ordered, but negotiated by Judith as partial restitution for institutional failures. She used it to establish the Roland Kimber Memorial Scholarship, funding classical music education for students from Queens. The first recipient attended Juilliard in 1956. Dozens followed. Our fee arrived 6 weeks after the trial concluded. A check for $25,000 plus expenses, drawn on Hillford Academy's account. Wolfe deposited it without comment. Our bank balance was healthy again. On a cold November morning, 2 weeks after Bernard's conviction, Nero Wolfe stood in the plant rooms, examining a recently bloomed cattleya. I'd climbed up to deliver the mail, and found him staring at the orchid with unusual intensity. "Remarkable color," he said. "Deep purple, almost indigo, very rare in this genus." "Pretty," I agreed. "Not pretty. Beautiful." Beauty and prettiness are distinct concepts, Archie. Prettiness is superficial, decorative, easily achieved. Beauty is structural, essential, earned through perfect expression of inherent nature. This orchid is beautiful because it's completely itself. No pretension, no compromise, just absolute fulfillment of its genetic potential. You're thinking about Roland Kimber. I'm thinking about excellence. Roland was beautiful in the same way this orchid is beautiful. Completely authentic, unwilling to compromise essential nature for convenience or safety. That authenticity threatened people who'd built careers on pretension and corruption, so they killed him. and paid the price. Some price? Margaret will serve 20 years, Bernard perhaps 15 before parole. Both will eventually be released. Roland will remain dead. The mathematics of justice are unsatisfying. You want them to suffer more. I want proportional consequences. A boy with extraordinary talent and limited resources challenged men with limited talent and extraordinary resources. He lost because physical power defeated moral authority, as it usually does. Bernard and Margaret will serve time, yes, but Roland lost his life, his art, his future. There's no equivalence. So why take the case? Why fight for justice if the justice is inadequate? He turned from the orchid, regarding me with those half-closed eyes. Because inadequate justice is superior to no justice. Because people like Roland deserve someone to care when they're destroyed by people like Bernard. Because if we don't fight these battles, however imperfectly, then privilege and corruption win absolutely. I can't revive the dead, Archie, but I can ensure they're not forgotten, and I can punish those who killed them. It's insufficient. It's also necessary. I nodded, understanding. For all his cynicism, Wolfe believed in fighting. Not because victory was assured, but because surrender was unacceptable. The orchid's named for him, Wolfe said. Cattleya Kimber. I'm registering it with the Royal Horticultural Society. It will be catalogued, preserved, propagated. A century from now, botanists will grow Cattleya Kimber without knowing why it's named that, but it will be named, and therefore remembered. You're a sentimental fool. I'm a realist who recognizes that memory is the only immortality available. Roland Kimber deserves more than newspaper headlines that fade and trial transcripts that gather dust. He deserves permanence. An orchid provides that. Does his mother know? I've written her. She approved. She'll visit in spring to see it bloom. We stood together in the warm, humid air, surrounded by 10,000 orchids, representing decades of cultivation. Cattleya Kimber was just one flower among thousands, beautiful and rare, named for a dead boy who'd challenged power and lost. But it existed, and it would continue existing, blooming every year, a living memorial to courage and talent cut short by greed. Not adequate compensation for murder, but something. And in this world, something is often all we get. 3 months after the trial, on a February evening, when snow was falling soft and steady outside the brownstone's bulletproof windows, Inspector Kramer stopped by unannounced. Fritz brought him to the office, where Wolfe was working through correspondence and I was reading the newspaper. "Evening, Kramer," I said. "What brings you to civilization?" "Passing by. Thought I'd update you on the Cathcart case." Wolfe gestured to the red leather chair. Fritz brought beer for Wolfe and Kramer both. The inspector settled in, looking tired but satisfied. "Bernard's attorneys filed their final appeal this morning. It was denied. He's being transferred to Sing Sing next week to begin serving his sentence. No more delays, no more legal maneuvering. He's done." "Good," Wolfe said simply. "Margaret Wu's doing better than expected. Prison psychiatrist says she's remorseful, cooperative, making progress. She'll be eligible for reduced sentence consideration in 12 years if she continues exemplary behavior. Might be out by 1967. She deserves a second chance." I said. "She was manipulated." "She was also an adult who murdered a kid," Kramer countered. "Manipulation doesn't erase that. But yeah, I think she'll rehabilitate. Unlike Bernard, who's still claiming innocence and threatening lawsuits from his cell." Wolfe drank beer. "Bernard will die in prison, maintaining his virtue. Men like him never accept responsibility. They're incapable of seeing themselves as perpetrators, only as victims of circumstance or conspiracy." "You nailed him, though," Kramer said. "That letter Roland wrote was the key. Without it, Bernard's lawyers would have destroyed Margaret's testimony as unreliable. The letter proved premeditation, threat, motive, smart kid, writing that insurance policy." "He was terrified," Wolfe said quietly. 17 years old, confronting institutional corruption, knowing powerful men wanted him silenced. Writing that letter was an act of courage and desperation. He hoped he wouldn't need it. He was wrong. We sat in silence for a moment. Caesar padded in, inspected Kramer, an old acquaintance, acceptable, and settled near the desk. Through the doorway, I could see Diana and Minerva patrolling the hallway. The dogs had returned to normal routine after the case concluded, but they remained vigilant, always vigilant. "Hillford's recovering," Kramer continued. "New board. financial reforms, academic improvements. Mrs. Pemberton's doing good work. They've endowed that scholarship in Roland's name, full ride to any qualified student interested in music. First recipient's a kid from Brooklyn, pianist, coincidentally. Appropriate, Wolfe said. Roland's mother came to the station last month, Kramer said. Wanted to thank everyone involved in solving her son's murder. She brought homemade cookies, cried the whole time. Said knowing the truth helped her grieve. I spoke with her, Wolfe said. She visited to see the orchid. Intelligent woman, resilient despite tragedy. Roland inherited his courage from her. She asked me to thank you personally, Kramer said. Said you gave her son justice when everyone else wanted to forget him. She'll be grateful the rest of her life. Wolfe looked uncomfortable. He dislikes overt sentiment. We performed a service for which we were paid. Gratitude, while appreciated, is unnecessary. Take the compliment, Wolfe. You earned it. They drank beer together, old adversaries who'd become something approaching friends through decades of solving murders. Kramer finished his bottle and stood. I should go. Just wanted to let you know the case is finally closed. Barnard's locked up. Margaret's serving time. Justice is done. As much as justice can be done anyway. It's never enough, Wolfe said. But it's what we have. Yeah. Kramer moved toward the door, then paused. You ever think about the ones we don't catch? The killers who get away? Constantly. Me too. Keeps me awake sometimes. But then I remember cases like this. Kids like Roland, who get justice because someone refused to accept the convenient lie, makes the job worthwhile. Indeed. After Kramer left, Wolfe sat silent for several minutes, staring at nothing. I knew that expression. He was thinking about Roland, about justice, about the fundamental unfairness of a world where talent and courage are no protection against wealth and violence. You okay? I asked. I'm adequate. The case concluded satisfactorily. The killer was caught. Evidence proved compelling. Justice prevailed. By objective measures, we succeeded. But subjectively? Subjectively, a 17-year-old boy with extraordinary gifts is dead. His potential, the music he would have created, the performances he would have given, the students he might have taught, is erased. Bernard Cathcart's 15-year prison sentence doesn't compensate for that loss. Nothing compensates for it. So why do we keep doing this? He considered the question seriously, because the alternative, allowing killers to escape justice, is intolerable. We live in a world where power protects itself, where wealth purchases silence, where institutions value reputation over truth. Occasionally, someone disrupts that equilibrium. Someone demands honesty, refuses intimidation, insists on justice. Those people are rare and vulnerable. When they're destroyed, someone must hold the destroyers accountable. That's what we do, Archie. We're not therapists or priests. We can't heal grief or grant absolution, but we can expose killers, prove guilt, ensure consequences. It's inadequate. It's also essential. You sound almost noble. I sound realistic. Noble would be preventing murders before they occur. We arrive after death, gather evidence, prosecute killers. That's janitorial work, not heroism. But cities need janitors, Archie. Someone has to clean up the messes. The modest private detective, very touching. The accurate private detective, don't romanticize what we do. We solve puzzles that happen to involve corpses. Sometimes those puzzles result in justice. Sometimes they merely provide closure. Either way, we're technicians, not saviors. Tell that to Mrs. Kimber. I did. She understood. She thanked us for finding her son's killer, not for resurrecting him. That's the appropriate response. Gratitude for what we achieved. Acceptance of what we couldn't. He finished his beer and reached for the stack of correspondence. Our conversation was over. I returned to my newspaper, reading about murders in Brooklyn, embezzlement in Newark, corruption in Albany. The world continued spinning, full of Bernard Cathcarts and Raymond Ashfords, people who took what they wanted and eliminated obstacles. But it was also full of Roland Kimbers, people who refused to accept injustice, who risked everything for truth, who challenged power despite knowing the probable cost. And occasionally, very occasionally, it was full of people like Wolfe, cynics who still believed in justice, realists who still fought for what was right, loners who still cared when innocents were destroyed. That night, I went up to bed, thinking about a 17-year-old pianist from Queens who discovered corruption, confronted oligarchs, and died for his principles. I thought about his mother, grieving in a small apartment, but finding comfort in truth. I thought about an orchid named Roland Kimber, blooming in the plant rooms 4 stories above me. And I thought about Nero Wolfe, quarter-ton shut-in, who grew flowers and solved murders and pretended not to care while caring desperately. It had been a good case, difficult, ugly, tragic, but good. We'd found the killer, we'd proven the crime, we'd delivered justice, not enough to compensate for a lost life, but something. And in this broken world, something is often all we get. Outside the brownstone at 918 West 35th Street, snow continued falling on Manhattan. Inside, Fritz was cleaning the kitchen, the dogs were patrolling their territories, and Nero Wolfe was reading about Central American orchids while drinking beer. Another case closed, another killer caught, another small victory against chaos. The work continued. It always did.